Chapter 21. Izzy POV. Bloody Drake Industries employees heard both Philip and her father call out her name from behind her. Both of them sounded more than annoyed with her actions and refusal to be married off to a cheating pig of a man. Knew they were both tracking her across the dance floor as well. They were not done, it seemed. Found Mr. Yummy's eyes right on her and huffed, saw him smirk right at her. Turned and looked behind her, and yes, both Philip and her father were coming towards her. Bloody hell, stuck between a rock and a hard place. What to do? Who was the lesser of the two evils? Right this moment. Turned back to find Mr. Yummy right in front of her. "Let me help you out, Izzy," he murmured, and she was suddenly swept away across the dance floor by him. He was smiling right down at her shocked expression, seemed amused himself. He was a bloody good dancer, never missed a step. "What do you want?" she asked, though already knew. He was here to try and pry Piper's travel arrangements out of her. Bradley Drake had told her as much. Piper had also warned her that Mr. Yummy was the most charming out of all Bradley's men, to watch out for him, to stay away from him, or she'd find herself in his bed before she knew it. Had to go with him, let him dance her away across the room, because he was actually saving her right this minute from a heated discussion with her father and Philip about her coming home and marrying her father's choice. Not something she was ever going to do. She was spun out away from him and then brought back into him, found her back pressed right up against his chest and one of his hands splayed across her stomach. It nearly went from one side of her to the other. She realized his hand was huge and he was holding her firmly to his body as the music stopped. "You're welcome," he said softly in her ear. "Only a reprieve," Izzy muttered. She could already see her father walking this way, disapproval once again written all over his face. Daddy looks unhappy." Mr. Yummy murmured in her ear, "Let's say you and I play a game. I'll get you out of this, and you answer me some questions, yes?" Izzy sighed heavily. She knew what questions they were going to be, did not want to play his game at all. Felt his other hand slide around her waist slowly, bit her lip. His touch was light and soft, very sensual indeed. "You've got maybe 15 seconds to make a decision," he whispered softly into her ear. Then his lips were on her ear, kissing it softly as well, turned her eyes to stare at him into his hazel green eyes, shocked by the intimacy of it, at his boldness with a complete stranger in front of all these people. Saw him smile. His eyes seemed to sparkle down at her, watched his eyes move right to her mouth and knew instinctively she was in trouble. Her heart rate increased dramatically at the anticipation of his kiss, which she knew was coming. Isabel Jenkins. It was her father, and his irritation showed in the way he snapped out her name. Found my Yummy's mouth right on hers. His hand slipped up the side of her body slowly as he kissed her, tongue invading her mouth. His hand moved right into her hair to hold her mouth to his. Not that it was needed. His kiss was warm and so sensual, there was no way she was going to pull away from it. Swore she heard a soft growl come from him as his mouth left hers slowly. "Oh, Izzy, I missed you, baby," he practically purred out as he looked down into her eyes. She knew her father was standing right there in front of them, could actually feel him glaring at her. "Who is this man?" "He is not a guest," her father grated out, clearly unhappy about what he was seeing. She had no idea how to explain this to him. "Baby, didn't you tell your father about me yet?" Mr. Yummy clucked his tongue right at her and shook his head slightly, then turned to look right at her father. "Mr. Jenkins, I'm Edward Patrick of Drake Industries." He held his hand out to her father and stood up to his full height, squared his shoulders, did not however let her go at all, still had that hand splayed across her stomach, holding her to him. He was really tall, she realized, at least 6'4" to her 5'7". Watched her father frown but reach out and shake the man's hand. "Drake Industries?" "Yes, as in Bradley Drake. I'm his left-hand man." "I've heard of him." Izzy saw her father actually smile now as he realized who Edward was. "Welcome, Edward, was it?" "It was. Sorry to barge in on your daughter's wedding." Mr. Yummy apologized, "But my little minx here forgot to tell me about this family function to attend." "Cheeky she is, this one." "Oh, he was all charm. Just like Piper said he would be. She was likely in deep trouble." "And you were her?" Izzy heard her father ask. Nothing. Izzy cut that right off. She could already see the bloody dollar signs in her father's eyes. He was thinking about what he could get out of marrying her off to this man already, solely because he worked for Drake Industries. Baby, I'm hurt by that. I flew all the way here from Montana just to see you. Eddie replied. He even sounded a little hurt to her ear. Now, do tell me who that man you were dancing with was. I am a jealous man, you know. Very possessive of what is mine. I'm not yours, she muttered and tried to extract herself from his arm. His free hand landed right on her face and turned it to look at him. The man Izzy. If he is bothering you, I will make him go away. She opened her mouth to say something, but then he was just gone. Let her go and was stalking off across the ballroom, heading she noticed right for Philip, who was standing watching them, she now realized. Edward, or Mr. Yummy as she liked to think of him, must have seen him looking at them, definitely had seen them dancing together, or her struggling not to dance with Philip and was now off to do something about it. Isabel, her father queried. She shrugged, had absolutely no idea what the man was going to do, didn't know him at all. Philip's look she noticed paled in comparison to Mr. Yummy's, whose blonde hair was immaculately styled, his clean-shaven jaw with that cute dimple in his chin, those sparkly hazel green eyes, and as he strode away from her, was pulling his jacket off. She got to see just how athletic his build was too, and those shoulders so big and broad. Damn, she realized he was smoking hot. Keep it together, she told herself. He was her type though, blonde and muscled up. He also had an air of authority about him as well. Stood and watched as he started to roll up his sleeve after tossing his jacket to his buddy, and only now realized Mr. Yummy was going to start a fight. A physical fist fight, sweet goddess. She muttered, a phrase she'd picked up from Piper. Went hurrying after him. She couldn't have him causing a scene here at Joni's wedding, rushed over there and put herself between him and Philip. Not that she cared if he actually slugged the pig. Just didn't want him to do it here. Stop, she told him, looking right at him. She heard Philip laugh from behind her. Darling, I can handle this. Felt his hand on her waist and turned and glared right at him. Shoved his hand off of her. Didn't want him ever touching her. Don't you touch me? She snapped at him. Yes, I wouldn't touch her. Found an arm snapped around her waist, and she was pulled right back against him just like she had been on the dance floor. Don't ever touch my woman, she heard Mr. Yummy grate out. She'll be marrying me pretty soon. It's practically a done deal. Philip smiled smugly at Mr. Yummy. It is not. Izzy snapped. She was really sick and tired of him and her father always trying to get what they wanted from her. Edward, baby. She turned her eyes up to him, found him looking right at her. She smiled up at him. He'd offered to help her out, so she would play the game and accept his help for now. I would never marry him, she murmured all seductively. Up at him, baby. I just don't want you to cause a scene at Joni's wedding. Felt his hand slide up her body slowly. Did you miss me? He asked right back, just as seductive a tone as she'd used. Gasped as his hand cupped her asterisk, and the other gripped her hip, pulling her hard against him. Touched her so brazenly, so very intimately in front of not just Philip but for all to see. Her eyes were locked onto his, as they sparkled down at her again, moaned softly, couldn't help it, as his fingers slid right over her asterisk one after the other, felt it harden under his touch, then his hand moved up her neck to pull her chin up higher. His mouth found hers a long, slow kiss, her eyes fluttered closed, and she was kissing him back. Leaned back into him, practically melted into him, couldn't stop herself, it seemed. Vaguely heard Philip swear, and then stomp off away from the two of them. Finally, she managed to pull her mouth from his. He was smiling down at her. You're welcome, he said softly. But then his mouth was on hers once more, and he was pulling her around to face him. She found herself shoved up against the wall, and his whole body was pressed up against hers, his hands on her hips. Gasped when she felt his hard asterisk against her stomach. Fuck, he muttered a moment later, pulling his mouth from hers. We need a room, he said, looking down at her. She could see just how dark his eyes had become, filled with desire, knew he wanted her. His hips were still pressed up against her, could still feel his asterisk, so damned big against her. Her heart was hammering inside her chest, felt his hand touch her face, saw his eyes move over her. "Do you want to find a room?" he suddenly asked her, and she really did. She realized, but couldn't knew he was going to seduce information out of her. That's what he was here to do. Piper had already warned her about him. She had not been wrong. Shook her head no. Couldn't seem to speak. "Say yes, Izzy," he said, all soft and husky. "I want you." He told her and ground his hips against her. "I really do." He growled down at her, so damned sexy. She'd never had a man growl at her like that before. "I'm sorry, Piper," she thought to herself as the word yes fell out of her mouth. His mouth was on her instantly, and then she was picked clean up off the floor and was being carried away. She had no idea where to. Hell, she didn't care. It had been a very long time since a man had touched her, told her he wanted her, and really meant it. She was kissing him back, her arms around his neck, uncaring of who saw it. Found herself up against another wall, his hips pressed close against hers. "You smell incredible," he growled softly. His hands moved to straighten the fabric of her dress as she caught her breath. His hand briefly found hers, sending a rush of emotion through her. His mouth moved to her neck, brushing it with gentle kisses before lingering there for a moment. Then he was gone, dropping to one knee before her. She looked down at him, finding his eyes fixed on hers. He smiled as he gently lifted one of her legs slightly for balance. She bit her lip as he held her gaze, her breathing quickening with uncertainty and anticipation as he leaned closer. She couldn't suppress the soft gasp that escaped her when he rested his forehead briefly against her, making her heart race. He lingered close, his touch gentle but unmistakably affectionate. A deep sigh escaped him as she caught her breath, overwhelmed by the closeness between them. His arms wrapped securely around her as he held her near, his attention completely focused on her. Every small gesture made her heart race, and before long she was struggling to contain the emotions building inside her. She covered her mouth with one hand, trying not to let the soft cry that escaped her echo through the room. Found Edward standing right before her, his eyes right on hers. His hands were unzipping her dress as she stared right back at him, felt it fall away to the ground, as did her strapless bra. A moment late, his mouth moved to her ear. "I will give you everything you desire, Izzy. Do you want me?" His hands were sliding over her body, touching her slowly. Yes, she nodded, and she did. Saw him smile and step back from her, start to remove his clothes, all slow and deliberate, his tie first, and then unbuttoned his sleeves, and then his shirt, peeling it off slowly, allowing her to see his chest muscles ripple and that six-pack so very defined. She reached out to touch it, want to touch him. No, he smirked right at her, pushed her hand away from his body. "Wait your turn." He practically drawled at her. She bit her lip as she got to watch him trail his own hand down his body, over his abs, all slow and deliberate, drawing her eyes along with his hand, wanted it to be her hand, all the way to his belt and undo it. Couldn't take her eyes off of him, it seemed. "I'm screwed," she whispered to herself. "Not yet, you're not." He chuckled as he shucked his shoes off. It was a rich, deep and amused sound, and goddess, she could swear, turned her on even more. Then he was naked and his hard asterisk was all ready for her. Bit her lip again at the sight of it. "Now you can touch," he stated softly and stepped closer to her. He took her hand and slid it down his chest, over his abs, and then to his waist. His mouth found hers as she rested her hand against him. She'd never been this close to a man before. Her fingers tightened slightly as she held onto him, her heart racing with every passing second. A deep growl came from him, and she chuckled softly. "You sound like an animal." "I am," he growled right back at her, and then she was lifted off the ground, his hands on her thighs as he pulled her legs around him. "I want to hear you say you're mine, Izzy," he told her as he held her close, drawing a soft gasp from her. He kept her close, moving with slow, deliberate confidence, making her heart race and leaving her breathless. She felt herself getting lost in the moment, almost overwhelmed by the intensity of it, before he suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" she gasped, looked at him confused, aching for her release, which was so very close. Say it, Izzy. Say you're mine. His eyes were locked onto hers, waiting for an answer. There was a quiet determination in his voice. I won't give you what you want until you admit you're mine, he told her firmly. He eased back just enough to create a little space between them, never breaking eye contact. Say it, Izzy. I want to hear you say you're mine, he repeated, his voice calm but unwavering. I'm yours, Izzy told him, giving him the words he wanted to hear. His mouth found hers in a passionate kiss as he pulled her tightly into his embrace. He held her close, his emotions impossible to hide, while she wrapped her arms around him, meeting his intensity with her own. Her fingers slipped into his hair as she leaned into him, completely swept up in the moment. A wave of emotion washed over her only moments later, leaving her breathless in his arms. His movements slowed but did not stop, and his mouth found her neck again, lingering there before resting in the crook of it. Izzy, he groaned as he took a deep breath, a low rumble escaping him. He pulled her closer once more, holding her tightly in his arms. Goddess, I want all of you, he told her, his voice deep and husky, filled with longing. Found herself on a bed beneath him, her hands resting on his strong arms as he supported himself above her. He looked straight into her eyes, never breaking eye contact as he held her close. Every moment between them felt more intense than the last, and, before long, another powerful wave of emotion swept over her, leaving her breathless. Felt him his hard asterisk slammed home inside of hers, and the deep groan of pleasure that came from him said it all. He was satisfied as much as she was. He was still looking down at her. Oh, Izzy, you are mine now. He growled right down at her, and she could swear his eyes glowed just a little as she stared up at him, still mesmerized by his gaze. Never before had she held a man's gaze during asterisk. Hell, she'd never had such an intense asterisk in all her life. Was still staring at him, trying to catch her breath, couldn't seem to drag her eyes away from the man, felt him shift and slip from her body, was pulled over to lay on his chest. Mine, he murmured softly as he kissed the top of her head. Izzy lay there and wondered what she had just gotten herself into with this man. Somehow knew she was in trouble, didn't exactly know what kind of trouble, but something felt very different about what they had done. His hand was moving over her back, tracing over her skin, soft, gentle patterns on her skin, and she could feel herself relaxing, starting to drift off to sleep, sighed softly as her eyes closed, and sleep tugged at her. Where is Piper? Izzy heard his voice so soft right as the edge of sleep was about to claim her. At the store, she answered as she fell asleep. Chapter 22. Harry POV. Harry raised an eyebrow at the growl of displeasure that came from Eddie when he saw Izzy struggling to get away from that man on the dance floor. They'd both come to this wedding dressed to fit in as guests. This was a formal occasion, and though they were not invited at all, had simply hopped the 12-foot brick wall that surrounded the Jenkins estate here in Maine. Cooper had sent them a link to her family's information. He glanced at it, but left it in Eddie's hands and dozed for most of the impromptu flight out here. She was likely his mate, so he was going to let the man sort her out himself. The place had guards at the main entrance to the estate and guard dogs, as this wedding was entertaining some very wealthy guests. Sneaking in was the only way, so that was what they had done, parked the rental car down a ways and strolled on through the woods to the north of the estate to get Indiana. They were all aware that Izzy had been unaffected by Eddie's charm. Even when he'd turned on his gamma charm, it had gotten him nowhere with the woman. Eddie was annoyed, to say the least. Never before had he come across a human woman he could not charm information out of. He'd told them she looked like she was attracted to him, even detected the telltale signs of arousal from the woman. Harry knew a gamma could not charm his own mate, as did the entire unit, including Eddie himself. It did speak volumes about this woman. It bothered Eddie that she was human. If she was his mate, and Eddie was not totally convinced she was, and Eddie had stated, nor was his wolf Timber, they smelled nothing. It, however, was not a full moon though, and when Bradley had called and offered Eddie another cock at the woman, the man had jumped at the chance, even rubbed his hands together in excitement at the prospect. They'd not long been home inside the pack. He'd barely had enough time to tell his mother what had happened with Izzy. She had been super excited at the thought of Eddie finally finding his mate. Before Bradley had called them to tell them that Piper had gotten away yet again, bolted from Alpha Timothy, and that the last place she'd been known to be was at Izzy's, that it was likely that Izzy would know where Piper was. Now, as he stood watching the man, hearing the low growl that had come from Eddie at seeing her try to get away from a human male, it was interesting to him. Stood and watched him as his wolf shot forward to the woman at full wolfen speed, not something normally done in a room full of humans. Dance her away from those two. One was her father, and the other, from what he'd seen, was one of her father's men, a junior partner at his company. Saw them both look at Eddie, and the way he whisked Izzy away across the dance floor. Saw her father look at them, then to the man Philip, told him, "Stay here, I will retrieve her, and we will sort this out." Harry didn't think that was going to happen, not with what he was seeing. The full moon was still a week away, but Eddie was all hands. Eddie was the charmer of the group, but he had his own rules, had never touched humans, didn't think it was right. Harry was tracking them out there on the dance floor, saw the way Eddie touched the girl, kissed her too, that was new, never seen him go that far with a human woman before, a lot of flirting and some touching, but never seen him kiss one before. Took it way too far when Izzy got between Eddie and Philip, actively touched the woman all intimately. Harry tried to warn him to dial it down. They were in the human world. It would be acceptable in a pack to see such a thing, but not here in the human world, and especially not here at a freaking high-end wedding. Though it pissed that human right off, which was likely Eddie's intent in the first place. He had just verbally called her his woman. Then all of a sudden he was all over Izzy, and any attempts at charming the woman for information on Pipe, they were gone from Eddie. It seemed he was going to seduce the woman, and she was not putting up much of a fight. Harry could actually hear both their heartbeats. Eddie had been again the minute his lips had met hers. He'd been done for. Watched Eddie pick Izzy clean up, knew the man couldn't just grab her and stroll out the ballroom with her, not when he was fully turned on and ready to mate her. It did not take the man long to find a bedroom. They had seen plans of the house, his memory would have taken over and told him where to go. Harry was strolling along behind them, quite curious as to just how far Eddie was going to take it. The room was not soundproofed in any way, and as Harry leaned up against the wall to text Bradley that they had arrived and there was a hiccup in the night's plan, he could hear the woman's cries of pleasure, shook his head, but smiled to himself. But it was when he heard Eddie tell the woman to state she was his, he knew she was definitely the man's mate. He and his wolf were in there trying to lay claim to a human and have her claim him back. Silly woman told him what he wanted to hear. She had no idea what she was actually saying. It was then that he walked away, sighing heavily. This was not how one laid claim to a human. They needed to be brought in and told what their mate was, told that they would be turned, had to be explained to what marking and mating was. But Eddie was, it seemed, bloody out of control, and that human girl was now in deeper than she knew, was now attached to Eddie without even understanding the consequences of her words, and how could she, when nothing had been explained to her first? Hopefully, the woman would be all right, and she would just presume they were in a relationship, that she wouldn't run away when told the truth. Harry didn't think Eddie would mark the woman. That would be monumentally stupid. With the full moon so close, was not enough time to sit her down and explain things to her, or talk to her about the transformation she would undergo. Dialed Bradley's number. He answered right away. "Did you get the information?" "No, Eddie, I believe is. How did one put this without taking their alpha off, trying to mate his human mate?" "What?" Laying claim to her as we speak. "I'm not going in there to try and stop it," he stated, likely to get his head ripped off. Bloody hell. He heard Brad's annoyance at the current situation. "Oh, it's going to be a mess, Brad." He actually got her to say the words, "I'm yours." Harry shook his head. There was only silence on the other end of the line, for a long minute, then a heavy sigh. "Not much I can do about it," from across the other side of the country. "If she is his mate, he's not going to be able to charm her into giving Piper up anyway." "It's unlikely," Harry agreed. "I'll try to talk to her when they stop going at it. Keep me up to date," and Harry, smack that idiot for his stupidity. This is not how it's done. The line was disconnected. Harry smiled to himself, permission to smack the gamma and get no retaliation. He liked that idea a lot. He found a chair and made himself comfortable in the hallway down from the room. Did not need to hear what was going on in there between them. Dozed off as he relaxed and settled for the night. Eddie was unlikely to come out of that room until morning. Woke to Eddie's voice in his head, "Harry." "Yes, you dumbass." Harry shot right back, his disapproval showing in his tone and word choice. Heard Eddie actually chuckle. He knew why the insult, "Piper is at her store. That's what Izzy told me," right on the edge of falling asleep. "Found a way around her resistance to your charm, I see." "I did." He sounded cocky and proud of his ability to get that information out of her. Might not go down so well when she woke up and realized, though. Likely just tick the woman off. He knew that from personal experience. "Brad said I have to smack you for your stupidity." "You told him." "I did. We should be leaving, you know." In the morning, heard the man yawn. "I'm tired. Tell the boss what Izzy said. Nothing we can do from way over here on the East Coast, anyway. You'll have some explaining to do, and not just to her." Harry cut the link. Yes, he was going to have to explain himself to her, to his alpha, to his mother. He was in for several lectures and likely one full-on beating. Pulled his phone out and texted Brad that Izzy stated in her half-addled sleep state that Piper was at her store. Which store had come right back at him. "I don't know, didn't get that much out of her." Got an annoyed emoji from the man and then nothing more. Woke up to find Izzy walking past him, or trying to sneak, he thought. She was barefoot and her shoes were in her hands. Glanced right at him. He glanced right at her neck as he sat up slowly. There was no mark there, a bonus. He turned his head down the hall to look for Eddie. There was no Eddie. Oh, the girl was doing the walk of shame, it seemed. His eyes moved right back to her. She was biting her lip as she looked right at him. Little did she know, Eddie would not be accepting her little runaway attempt. She was his now. "Where are you off to, young lady?" He stretched himself out, feeling a little stiff from sleeping in the chair. "Breakfast," he heard her say, but her heart rate picked up. It was a lie. "I wouldn't try and run, Izzy. Mr. Yummy in there." He jerked his thumb towards the room she'd left Eddie in. "I will likely get really mad." Saw the woman's eyes go really wide at his use of the nickname she and Piper had given Eddie. Then she was just gone, running down the hallway. It was her family home, and she would know every inch of the house. He sighed and shook his head, could go and stop her, but not his mate, and Eddie had played this out backwards. This was the fallout of that decision. Side mind link to the man, "Eddie, your human woman is running from you," he told the man, fully amused by the turn of events. He was not the only one to hear the massive snarl that came from Eddie down in the room Eddie had spent the night in with her, or saw a very naked Eddie bang out of the door a second later to stare down the hallway, his eyes locked right on Izzy, who'd come to a halt at the end of the hallway at the sound of that very aggressive, pissed-off snarl. She was now looking right at Eddie, biting her hip at him. Oh, she knew she was in trouble. It was written all over her facial expression. Somehow she knew there was more going on here, knew she had gotten in deeper with Eddie than expected. Saw her hesitate when Eddie rapped out her name, and thought for a moment the woman was actually going to stop running away and come back to Eddie. Actually thought about it, he realized. Possibly their bond in effect, seeing as Eddie had gotten her to claim him. Then she was just gone, around the corner, and he could hear her actually running. Didn't bother to stop her? Eddie snarled right at Harry, just shrugged, as he watched Eddie head back into that room, to pull his pants on. She had not been marked and did not understand what she was to him at all, so had run away like any confused human would be. They headed off after her the minute Eddie had his pants on, didn't bother with anything else, found her outside, about to get into a car. "Isabel," Eddie snapped out, "don't you dare leave, you are mine now." They were standing about 20 yards away, and she was now in the car and locking the doors. "I don't belong to you," she shot back, "not to anyone." She sounded annoyed by the man's claim that she was his, and "I'll not tell you where Piper is, no matter how many times you try to seduce me into it." "You already told me." He heard the amusement in Eddie's voice. "While you were half asleep, baby." Saw her eyes fill with anger almost instantly, and then she yelled right at him, "Stay the hell away from me," and sped away down the estate driveway. Harry grabbed the man as he actually gasped out in pain. "No," he cried out, clutching at his chest. It's not a rejection, Eddie. She just doesn't understand. You did this all backwards. Harry tried to console him. They stood and watched as she drove away from the estate, heard Eddie's wolf Timber suddenly snarl all angry, and then he was gone at full wolf speed, running clear across the estate. A massive snarl ripped right out of him as she actually left the estate grounds. Fuck, both he and his wolf Axel muttered together and shot off after the beast, and it was Timber, not Eddie right this minute. The man's wolf was about to rip out of him and go and claim her in full wolf form, and the poor human woman had no idea what he was. Seems Eddie's beast was not taking her leaving him at all well. Watched as they went up and over that 12-foot wall like it was nothing. He and Axel followed, had to get to him first. The stupid man and his beast were going to scare her to death or traumatize the woman into a full-blown rejection. Heard the first cock of his shift and swore out loud as he saw Timber, Eddie Wolf, rip right out of him, now in full control to claim what was his. Saw his large silver wolf shoot out of the forest and right out into the center of the road she was driving down, had managed to get in front of her car, used all his wolf speed to do so. The man's beast, uncaring of who saw, heard her car's brakes squeal on the road, turned his eyes to her, to see a very shocked-looking Izzy staring down the road at Timber as that wolf stalked towards her car. Timber was a good-sized wolf, at least twice the size of a regular wolf, and his very bright green eyes were locked right on Izzy in her car, his mate, who was actively trying to run away from him. Harry launched himself right at Timber as he stalked around to the side of her car. It was clear he wanted his mate, and he was going to claim her regardless of the consequences. He slammed into Timber and shoved him away from the car with all he and Axel had. Enough, you're scaring her. They roared down the mind link to both Eddie and his beast, flooding their aura at them to try and contain him. Mine. Timber snarled right back at him. Harry found himself wrestling with Timber right there on the side of the road. The wolf was all snarls and claws out drive. He yelled at Izzy when she just sat there and stared in complete shock at what she was seeing. Go. He roared at her a second later. He and Axel. They had to get her away from Timber, and Eddie was going to have to deal with it and reapproach her another time, when he was calm and his beast was not in control. Saw her finally gun the engine and speed away as he struggled to maintain his hold on Timber, had that beast around the neck and shoved down on the ground, Axel lending him every ounce of his wolfen strength, pushed past his Delta rank and pulled on all his Gamma bloodline to hold the man down. On the bright side, they were blood brothers and their strength was matched. He could hold him down till she got far enough away to be safe from Timber. He was holding that wolf down, yelling at him to release, to calm down, that it was not a rejection, that they could fix it, knew where she lived, knew where she worked, that this was not the time or place to be fucking wolfed out. On the side of Human World Road where anyone could drive past and see the two of them fighting against each other. Took a good 10 minutes of fighting the damned wolf, managed to get him shoved into the tree line thankfully, and was thankful for the very early time of morning. Didn't relish having to try and explain this to humans or their alpha if a human filmed it and it went viral. Finally, he got Eddie back, glared right up at his big brother, annoyed with him. Look at what you bloody did, he muttered to Eddie, indicating all the bite marks and claw marks on his arms and torso. His ruined suit too. Sorry. Eddie sighed as he looked down at his own wolf's handiwork. Come on, you're butt-ass naked on the side of the road, dumbass. Walked Eddie all the way back to where they had left their rental car, changed into casual non-blood-stained clothes. Used the emergency patch kit they carried everywhere for just this kind of situation to patch his bloody wounds while Axel healed him. Stay here, you bloody fool, Harry muttered as he headed back to the estate. They had not actually expected Izzy to drive away from Eddie, and though he had pulled his pants on, had left everything else behind in that room. Came out of the room carrying Eddie's belongings only to see Philip strolling down the hallway, a smug look on his face. Ran away, didn't she? That's because she'll be coming back to me. Harry's joy tightened as Axel bristled inside of him. She won't. Edward will be marrying her in about 9 weeks. They just haven't told anyone yet. He shot at him. Lover's tiff is all. Izzy always goes back to him, loves him, you see. watched with satisfaction as the man got angry and then stalked off. Harry left himself now that he had Eddie's belongings. 9 weeks would give Eddie time to sort this bloody mess out. Not only was he going to be in trouble with Bradley, their mother and father were going to tear him a new one as well. They all knew humans had to be handled very differently to wolves, seeing as they knew nothing about otherworldly creatures. Had to basically get them to fall in love with you first, move them into the pack and ease them into their new life, allow them to see wolves here and there, get them used to the fact that large wolves roamed about all the time, and once they were comfortable with that, had no actual fear of wolves, tell them what was going on and what marking and mating meant. Shift for them to see their mate's wolf and make sure they understood that the beast inside them was of no threat to them. Found Eddie staring out the window of the car when he'd left him, unhappy about all that had gone on. Did not bring up Philip or his comment. It was likely to set Timber off into another rage and go after that man, who still thought he had a claim on their mate. She'll head back to Portland. Harry told him, "It's going to be all right, Eddie." His brother said nothing, took the clothes handed to him, and muttered, "Let's just go," sounded like he was still hurting. It was not a full rejection, just a really bad start to their mate bond, but Harry knew the man was now practically in the same situation as their own alpha, had a runaway mate to hunt down and persuade into coming back to him, to give him a chance to show her he loved her and would never hurt her. Chapter 23. Bradley POV. At the store. She owned 3 stores, checked the one here in Portland, but she was not there, no real surprise, and he was not expecting her to be here in Portland. He knew she had been at the store when Timothy had collected her. So she was not going to go back there. Bradley booked Hadley onto a flight home to Montana. He couldn't keep the girl out here with him, not while he needed to be actively searching for Piper. She was likely to wander off again trying to take matters into her own hands, and that had not gone down so well. If Piper hadn't stepped in and helped out, she likely would also be missing right now. He made sure that there was someone at the airport to actually pick her up. His father stated he would do it himself. So the girl couldn't do anything stupid like come back out there. Bradley put her on that flight himself, watched her walk down the gangplank, and stood and watched it take off to make sure she didn't sneak off of it. Alpha females could be more than stubborn and a handful to boot. Drove himself the 2-hour drive to Olympia to check her store there. No such luck. He couldn't see her, even went into the store and asked when she would be coming to the store next. Wasn't expected at all. He sat around and watched the store all day, even after the manager closed it up. It was Sunday afternoon and closed up at 1400. He stayed longer than that, hoping Piper would show up and let herself in after hours. No such luck. Cooper had gotten on a flight to LA, where her other store was, and was checking that out himself, staking it out as Bradley was the store here in Olympia. Waited on Cooper's call only to find out that the store too was closed and there was no sign of Piper or Brandon. She only owned 3 stores, and Izzy had told Eddie at the store, frowned deeply. There was something twitching in his brain, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Asked Cooper to stake that store out all night until it was opened in the morning, and he would do the same here in Olympia. Sat in the damned car all night, not a single sign of her or his boy. He had pocketed the picture Hadley had taken from Piper's house. He did not need his father calling him and hounding him about the boy, who would be his first grandson. Bradley could well imagine the harassment he would be getting over bringing him in. His brother only had girls. Sighed heavily as he stared at the store, as the manager here opened it up for business. Still there was no sign of Piper or his son. This was not good. They didn't know who she hung out with, if she had other human friends to go to for help. Hell, she could have a closed network of rogues that she might be affiliated with and gone to them for protection. He didn't know. Cooper reported the same from LA, and both Harry and Eddie were on their way back now too. He'd been informed that Izzy had fled from Eddie, and the man's wolf had ripped right out of him to try and claim the girl, that Harry had to stop it and contain the beast. Nothing good out there, nothing good out here. Everyone was headed back to Portland. Izzy was likely to head home. Obviously, she had no idea she had allowed Eddie and his wolf to claim her. That he'd talked her into claiming him right back, and was now bound to the man by the moon goddess herself. Even without the full moon upon them. Was going to have to get that girl back to his pack, along with Eddie, and sort that shit out as well. He was going to have to sit the woman down and explain what they were, what she actually was to Eddie, and hope she did not freak out completely and outright reject his gamma. It might help to tell her that Piper and Brandon were also wolves. That should go a long way into showing her that they were not monsters. If she could be swayed into a mate bond with Eddie, he would initiate her into his pack right away, but that was for his own selfish needs. He could use her loyalty oath to get the information about Piper out of her. She would have to tell him once she was a pack member and he was her alpha. He would have to do it the right way, sort her and Eddie out first, explain to Izzy that Hadley was actually his little sister and not his mate as Piper believed, and see if she would tell him where she was. If not, he'd tell her that Piper was his missing mate and he'd been searching for her since she left him. Hope that Izzy would believe him and help him out. If none of this worked, he was going to alpha order the information out of the woman that he knew was really going to piss his gamma off, but there would be no other way. It was his last resort. He was actually hoping she would believe him, call Piper, and tell her about Hadley, and help him to convince her to come home. He had to find Piper before something bad happened to her, bring her home, and sort this bloody nightmare out. He understood it wasn't going to be a piece of cake, but he was going to do it. Wondered if they could get along and actually be mates. He would like to find out. A goddess-gifted mate was not something to be discarded lightly. Bradley knew she had her reasons for doing what she did. Couldn't even blame her, but they did need to come together, face to face, and at least try to discuss it. Maybe he could get her to agree to a trial relationship if their bond was actually severed. He definitely wanted her to give him a chance to see if they could come together, wanted her in this pack, wanted his son in his pack. Needed to get her to introduce him and Brandon to each other as well. Was sitting in the hotel suite with Cooper when Eddie and Harry finally walked in. Bradley stared right at his gamma, disappointed in him more than a little, was not going to lecture the man, had been going to. But seeing him now, he could tell Eddie knew he had screwed things up royally. The look on his face said it all. Just shook his head at his gamma and stated simply, monumentally stupid Eddie. I know, was all he said. Is there any sign of her? He asked. No, Bradley shook his head at the man, held out a piece of paper to the man. Her home address, I suggest you go over there, knock on her door and, if she is there, apologize to the woman. Then bring her here to me for a formal sit-down chat. Yes. Saw him sigh, nod his head, take the paper and just turn and head out of the room by himself. Bradley looked right at Harry questioningly. Is that wise? He on his own with her. Harry shrugged. I had long words with him, and Timber is currently sulking, so it should be fine. Sulking? Cooper snorted from his position on his chair. Never had Steele sulk, not once. Even Bradley was shocked by that. Wolves didn't sulk as far as he knew. Well, not the male ones. Did you tell your parents and they rip him a new one? He asked Harry curiously. Not yet. Harry shook his head. Timber actually stalked her himself, and he now understands after the fact, not in the moment. That what he did was actually wrong, but I did have to remind him, both of them, humans had to be handled differently, and yes, I chastised him a lot. Hence the sulking. Bradley nodded. The man's wolf was disappointed in himself, it seemed. Likely a good thing, should stop him from doing it again when he saw the woman. Good, if we were back home inside the pack, I would have to punish him formally for his actions. He is aware of that. Harry nodded. Any news on Piper at all? No, we checked all of her stores here on the West Coast. Nothing at all. She's not at any of them. Alpha Timothy? Gone back to his pack for now, I believe. It was not looking good at this point. I need Izzy to come around and quickly. It was only just over an hour before Eddie walked back into the hotel suite. We're all idiots, he muttered, and dropped a contract into Bradley's hands. At her store, he shook his head. Piper is at her store, or will be, the new one that Izzy will be in charge of in a month's time, in Sydney, Australia. Bradley's eyes widened at the thought of Piper and Brandon halfway around the world, and completely unprotected. The contract in his hand was Izzy's employment contract, which stated the country, state, and city, even had the address of her new workplace. He read through it. Izzy was getting a butt-ass load of perks for this relocation, and a salary that was enormous, $95K. Bloody hell, made his eyes widen in surprise. Wondered how much Piper Harper was actually worth for the first time. Did she pay all her employees this much money, and did they all get the same perks, or was Izzy a one-off? Sat on the edge of his bed and Googled the Piper Harper wedding dress designer's net worth out of pure curiosity. Damned near fell off the bed he was sitting on. $60 million, sweet goddess, and she was marked as up and coming, expected to make even more money when she expanded stores internationally over the next 5 years. The article he was reading stated she had plans for stores in New York, London, France, and Italy, and once they were opened her expected net worth would increase dramatically. What is it? Cooper asked him. Bradley, still in shock, just handed his phone over to let the man see it for himself. Heard a whistle come from him. Well, Brad, you got yourself a millionaire for a Luna. He showed the information to the rest of the unit. Gonna be really hard to bring her in. He muttered, can't just yank her from the human world. It will be noticed if she suddenly just disappears. You're right on that one. Cooper agreed with him. I might want to do one of those big-ass human weddings somewhere flashy and announce she's moving her home base to Montana, his beta mused aloud. At least Bradley Drake is a good match money-wise for her. It would likely be expected she would marry wealthy. What's your current net worth in the human world? Harry asked. About 500 million. Bradley nodded. Good, just go public with your relationship. That will solve the issue. Everyone will know where she is. She can work from the pack. Hell, Brad, build that woman her own store and a big-ass one in Helena. Make her head office right near yours. Got to bring her in first. He sighed. Convince her of taking me as her mate. No wonder she could just up and leave. Go anywhere whenever she wants. Has passports. She had been playing at being a human for 8 years now. He'd seen the photos, traveled all over the world, likely mingled with some of the humans rich and famous. He was damned lucky she hadn't found a human male to marry at this point. So are we going to Sydney to get them? It was Eddie. Yes, I guess we are. Bradley nodded. The use of the word them by Eddie implied he thought that was where Izzy was as well, and to be honest with how close those two appeared to be, it was likely if Izzy knew where she was in trouble, and had told Izzy. He believed Izzy would go right to her. Technically was the woman's Luna. No wonder they were closely bonded. That's a bloody long flight. Cooper told him a few minutes later. Googled it, no nonstop flights from here, got 1 or 2 layovers, 19 to 22 hours is the shortest flight time. I'll see what I can get us all on. Our passports are in the pack. Bradley huffed. Won't be able to book an international flight without them, so extend that by another 7 hours or so. He rubbed his hand over his face. It was nearly going to be 2 full days before he could get to her, and they would all be jet-lagged too. Eddie, do you think Izzy went from Maine to Australia? It's possible, he nodded, but as I wandered through her place, I found travel plans with Qantas for travel in 1 month's time. She might have to come back here and work. I don't actually know, though I did not find a passport with her travel plans. You might have to stay here. Watch her place then. While Harry goes and gets our passports, I'll organize a private plane. Alpha Wesley is only a phone call away, and we can likely use one of his planes and fly out of Olympia with his company. I'll have to explain likely, though. Heard Cooper snort with laughter. Now you two have something in common. Really in common. Shut it, Coop, it's not funny. West will think it's funny. His own Luna ran off to Singapore, if I recall correctly. Bradley sighed. That was true, and West had had to go and retrieve her himself. Though he was a changed man since attaining his Luna. Laughed and smiled all of the time, not the grumpy surly man he'd used to be. Even appointed his beta as his dual alpha. Now a 2 alpha pack, very strong they were. Harry, head home, get all our passports and pack suitcases for each of us, then get back here ASAP. I'll save you some time, Brad. I'll have Mum bring them out. That'll shorten the trip by like 3.5 hours. She'll also want a word with Dumbass here. He jerked his thumb at Eddie, who was glaring at him now. That's a good idea. Have her fly straight to Olympia. We'll leave as soon as possible. Your mum can sit and watch for Izzy while we're hunting Piper. Picked his phone up off the table and scrolled through his phone contacts until he found Wesley Carlton EMP and called the man. while Harry called his own mother. Alpha Bradley, what can I do for? Didn't even greet him. Hi West, got me a dilemma. I need your help. Sure, how many men? None actually, not that kind of dilemma. I need a plane to Australia. What? Australia. What's out there? A runaway she-wolf. Heard the man snort with amusement. Did your mate run away? Shut it, West, didn't yours? Yes, all the way to Singapore. Seems you do have a dilemma. He did sound very amused. I don't. However, have flights that go to Australia. Bradley sighed. He didn't think there would be no packs out there that he knew of. Didn't relish human world travel for that long a journey, to noisy, crowded, and no legroom. Who's the she-wolf? And why Australia, if you don't mind my asking, Bradley? Piper Harper, and she ran off after another alpha threatened her son. A boy, his tone was no longer amused. Piper Harper as in, of goddess gowns? Yes, you heard of her? Joanne and Ella's Luna dresses were from goddess gowns. Can you help me out at all? I don't care about the cost, West. There was silence for a minute. Likely he was tracking his airline's routes and planes to try and see if he could assist the boy. Mine. I had no idea. Till just the other day. He admitted West would be no threat to them. They were allied packs, could ask for actual assistance in the retrieval if he thought he needed it, and the man would likely help him. Well now, I guess I am going to help you out. How many seats do you need on that plane? Me, my unit. Piper, my son, and likely a human woman, my Gamma's mate, Piper's close friend, also run off. Thinking that all three of them went to Australia, he heard the man ask, sounded all business now. Yes, Piper is about to open a store in Sydney in a month. The human is due to run it. How old is your son? 7, he answered honestly. W. What? Sounded very shocked. I can't rearrange my flights or planes. I'm looking at the schedules now. It's too much disruption. But I could lend you my own private jet. Any help would be greatly appreciated, West. Long flight time. We'll need to stop and refuel at least once each way. Hawaii, do you? Anywhere you want, West. That's your department. When do you expect to be here? Currently in Portland, just waiting for passports, so like 4 or 5 hours, we'll come to Olympia. Good, that's where my jet is always on standby. Meet you there, come when you can. I've got a private lounge. You can wait in till your passports arrive. I'll log the flight plan. How long do you expect to be in Sydney? I don't know, she's. Bradley sighed heavily. It's going to be difficult, he ended up saying. Fair enough, I'll organize everything on my end. Just come right to Wolf Airline Terminal. See you in a few hours, Bradley. Thanks, West. He disconnected the call. Bradley could already hear Eddie and Harry's mother berating Eddie down the phone for his idiotic behavior with Izzy. Plucked that phone from Eddie's hand. Tia, enough. Please just get the passports and pack for at least 3 days, and bring someone with you to shift watch Izzy's place. He snapped out, his alpha tone showing. Got silence and then a simple yes, Alpha, and the line disconnected. You're welcome, he muttered at Eddie as he tossed Harry's phone back to him. Let's move. Chapter 24. Piper POV. Piper and Brandon spent the day resting in their hotel room, too jet-lagged to even consider going out and doing anything, so they just lazed on the couch in their suite and watched movies and ordered room service when they were hungry. They did hit the hotel's swimming pool after lunch just to break up the monotony of the day. Though neither of them lapped, they just lazed around and talked about the things Brandon wanted to do while there. Aspen was once again asleep, it seemed. They had been here before, and Brandon was already listing off all the things he wanted to do. She just smiled at him and told him to go ahead and make that list. Actually did feel safe now that she was well away from both them alphas. Received a really weird apology text message from Izzy that just stated, I'm so sorry, Piper. I will come right to you and explain. I'm in Sydney, remember? Piper had texted her right back to remind her she'd flown out of the country to get away from Timothy Avery. Piper had called her from the Portland airport and told her they would be going to Sydney until things settled back down, likely stay from now until her normal return date in 4 months' time, had been going to be here for the first 3 months of the store's opening. For the clients that would want to see her. That it had been Brandon who had actually suggested it. though she had obviously not told her that it had actually been Aspen who'd insisted on the move. Brandon knew they were off to Sydney in a month's time, and within 10 seconds of him voicing it, Aspen had pushed forward and stated, "We go now." His young gravelly voice still shocked her when she heard it. What had surprised her even more was that she had actually felt his alpha aura roll off of his wolf. He was really trying to assert himself now. It was the second time he'd come forward now. She'd nearly gotten up off the couch on the spot to do as he wanted, realized he was going to be one strong alpha male when he grew up. Aspen calmed down. She'd smiled at him gently, trying to placate the young alpha wolf inside her boy. To her shock, he'd snapped right back at her. Now, Piper had shuddered at the power he'd rolled at her, got the feeling he knew what he was doing and how to do it, barely managed to resist the urge to bare her own neck to her 7-year-old son and his wolf. All right, had come out of her mouth before she could stop it, and once she had agreed to do his will, he receded. She'd looked right at Brandon, questioningly. "That is really weird, Mum." He'd told her. She knew he was referring to the way Aspen pushed forward and talked through him without permission. The way he would have been shoved to the back of his own mind. "You'll get used to it," she told him. "Is he mad?" "Sounds like he is," she questioned. "No, not mad." He was quiet for a minute, and she knew he was talking to his wolf. Could see the telltale flicker of his wolf's eyes every now and then. "He wants to protect us. Telling me to tell you. We should leave right now. He's worried." "All right," she nodded, looked right into his eyes. She knew Aspen would be watching from behind Brandon's eyes as much as Harper was right this minute. Let's resolve his worry. Piper didn't want his wolf getting agitated and ripping out of her 7-year-old son. She also knew that his wolf could hear everything she told Brandon, so he would understand and know that she was actively listening to him, going to give him what he wanted. Did not particularly like taking orders from his wolf, but was really concerned that he would shift for the first time, and it was too early for that. She was just trying to keep him inside the boy at this point. But she was now really starting to worry that she was not going to be able to do that for very much longer. It did seem that any time there was a threat to them, he was likely to surface. It was his nature as an alpha wolf to protect what was his, and she was all he had, so that protective alpha streak was going to be pushing his wolf at all times. So reducing the threat he was feeling from another alpha wolf was what she would do. Moved her Nissan into the garage, was not going to park it in the airport car park for months on end or an unknown amount of time at this point. Called for a town car to take them to the airport. She always had their passports on her. They did like to travel spontaneously sometimes, and having them on her made that much easier. She had booked them flights on the way to the airport, though they had a 4-hour wait for the next flight to LAX, and so had spent that 4 hours shopping for carry-on luggage and clothing to travel with. They could purchase more in Sydney. She'd called Izzy and told her the new plan while waiting for their flight. Izzy had been shocked but didn't argue with her, simply confirmed she would follow in a month's time as planned. All her stuff was boxed up back in her house bar the essentials. Piper had seen that herself. They'd had a 2.5-hour layover in LAX and then their final leg of their journey, a 15.5-hour flight to Sydney where they now were. Staying in a hotel due to the apartment that she'd rented out for Izzy would not be available for another 27 days. Had gotten a hotel that was close to the store, with a family suite for them to stay in. Their hotel suite had 3 bedrooms, was basically a very expensive apartment that was going to cost her a small fortune, had booked into it for 7 full nights at this point. But it was likely she would just stay here until that apartment was ready for them to pick up the keys and move in. Izzy had texted her again not long after she had arrived in Sydney. "I'm coming, trouble myself, with my family and Mr. Yummy. LL get the next flight out. See you soon." Piper sighed. Why couldn't that man just let it go? It was just a freaking dress. Yes, she'd made that girl cry. Bet get over it already. Find another dress. There were a million dresses out there to choose from. Surely the man couldn't be that infuriated about that woman not getting the exact dress she wanted, that he was going to harass her staff constantly about it. That was just ridiculous. "What kind of trouble, Izzy? Are you safe?" She texted right back. "I think so," is what she had gotten back, and an hour after that she had gotten travel details from her via email. was flying out of New York with a stopover in LAX and then on to Sydney, would be here in a day's time. Something was going on. Had texted her back that she had received the travel info and would pick her up at the airport when she got here. On the bright side, Izzy could stay here in the suite with them. There was plenty of room. Put a call into her builder here in Sydney and let him know she was not only in the country, but just a short drive from the store itself. Met the man at 4 in the afternoon and smiled as she walked into her new store. It was larger than any of the ones in the States, though Izzy's office was up in a loft space like Piper's was, as was her studio workspace, which she intended to work from for that first 3 months. Liked the loft space because she could look down over the store itself. The building had a nice reception area at the front of the store. Between the 2 large display windows, it had 6 dressing rooms and 3 runways for the women to walk down, to show off the dresses that they liked for their family. Each runway even had floor lights along the edges to help the women shine. There would be several comfortable sitting areas for the families to sit in, no overcrowding, and would have an actual working fitting room with a full-time seamstress on site Thursday to Sunday to make alterations right away. There were 2 large glass display cases which had already arrived and been installed that would be filled with tiaras and jewelry. A whole section of downstairs was designated just for veils and accessories. There was even a coffee hub area for the store employees to use and to provide free coffee for the guests sitting waiting to see the bride in her dress. Updated by findnovel.net. She had already contracted a local bakery to supply freshly made cakes, cookies, and pastries on a daily basis. Noted that her Jura Z10 coffee machine was already here and on the coffee hub bench. Not unpacked but delivered. She'd pretty much let Izzy pick all the accessories for the coffee hub as well as her own office, making the store all Izzy. It would be 2 more weeks before the supplies started to roll in, and the assistant manager that Izzy had hired to be her second in command, a man named Devin, would be in charge of setting up the store. She was in contact with him, as was Izzy, to get updates and let them know of any delays. His office was downstairs out the back, near the staff room. She really enjoyed walking around her store, seeing all the work done, and it was nearly ready to be opened. This was the exciting time of opening a new store. Izzy had been with her for the opening of all her stores. Relied on that woman for a lot. Piper didn't have the business degree that Izzy had. She was just a designer, so it was actually Izzy that ran the actual business side of things. They collected Izzy from the airport. The woman looked tired, like she'd not slept at all. "Did you get any sleep?" Saw her shake her head. "Not really, fitful at best. I'm so sorry, Piper." For what? Nothing about Mr. Yummy was going to be Izzy's fault. Saw the woman's eyes move towards Brandon briefly, and then say nothing. Didn't want to say anything in front of him, she guessed. Piper already knew that Izzy had been able to resist Edward's charm, so she highly doubted that the woman had told him about Brandon. Sat with her in her bedroom of their hotel suite and looked at her after she'd showered and changed. "I'm sorry, Piper, I think. I'm not 100% certain, but I think I told Mr. Yummy where you are." Frowned slightly, not certain. "I'd had a few drinks and the night was really weird." She sat on the bed next to her. "What happened with him? You said you were in trouble with him. How'd he even find you out in Maine?" Saw the woman sigh and shake her head. "Bradley Drake sent him out there. Bradley charmed Laura out of my information. She gave him where I was and the work mobile too. I've switched it off." Typical. There was no surprise to this, not if Bradley and his unit thought that Izzy's resistance to Eddie could mean that there was a possibility that she was Eddie's mate. "How'd the wedding go?" she asked, knowing going home for Izzy was always something she didn't enjoy. "Arg. Joni is really happy. That is good. It was a lovely wedding. Philip was there, of course, and guess what?" Piper sighed. She knew what your father and Philip once again came at you about marrying him. This happened nearly every time she went home. Poor woman. It didn't matter that Philip was a cheating pig, as Izzy called him, cornered you again, right? "Yeah. Father tried to tell me. Philip was a changed man. They've even gone so far as to already draw up the prenup this time. Like I'm going to say yes. Idiots." Piper shook her head. She knew that Izzy was never going to go back to that man. "Gets worse, Piper. Mr. Yummy and that other guy turned up all dressed immaculately. What guy? The one from the first visit. She needed a bit more clarification. No, the other one, that was doing rotating walk-bys of the store with Mr. Yummy. Oh, that will be Harrison, or Harry, I think they call him. He's actually Mr. Yummy's younger brother. I was like caught between a rock and a hard place, Piper. Philip and my father, or my Yummy. Mr. Yummy actually got me away from them, she sighed again. Then when he introduced himself to my father as working for Bradley Drake, she huffed in annoyance. I swear I saw dollar signs in my father's eyes. It didn't help that Mr. Yummy claimed I was his girlfriend. He did what? Yeah, Kay, said me right in front of everyone. Tried to go and start a fight with Philip even. I had to stop him and, well, that man is everything you warned me about. Saw the woman close her eyes for a moment and sigh again. I stupidly played his game Piper when Philip announced I would be marrying him right to Mr. Yummy's face, and I just lost it. Had enough, you know. Piper could well imagine Edward's reaction. Likely would not have gone down so well, especially if he thought that Izzy was his mate. The full moon was not yet upon them, but her stubborn resistance to him and his gamma charm would likely speak for itself. I decided to actually play the role of his girlfriend, and he was suddenly all handsy, and then, well, Kay, sing me again, got very intimate, and Piper watched as Izzy shook her head. Next thing I know, I'm agreeing to go to a room with him. I don't know what happened, too much champagne in me at the time, had like 5 or 6 glasses by them. He actually seduced you, like asterisk? Oh, that was, well, it got a bit. He's very dominant, Piper. Happy to touch me, be all naked with me, but, Piper questioned her, needed to know exactly the details. She was actually sitting here trying to figure out if she was Edward's human mate, was definitely leaning towards it at this point. And all dominant, that's definitely a wolf thing. He wouldn't actually, just have asterisk with me, some weird fetish. He knew I wanted to, but just stopped and wouldn't nod until I told him I was his. Izzy, tell me you did not agree to be his? Oh, that was not good. Saw the look on her face. It's been a very long time, Piper, since someone touched me like that. It's also hungry, like he needed to have me, was almost desperate to have me. She shook her head again and sighed, which is completely stupid. Clearly the man gets action all the time. He was very skilled. Izzy, did you tell him what he wanted to hear? Yes, she muttered, had to get, well, you know, asterisk. What words exactly, Izzy? She asked. Found Izzy looking at her a mixture of worry and curiosity. I'm yours, she stated, and well, I was like a second later for hours. Even knew afterwards I'd done something wrong, like I've involved myself with the wrong kind of man or something. I don't know, Piper, but it was like I just couldn't help myself. I get it, and unfortunately she did. The mate bond was so darn strong. Even as weak as she had been when trying to leave, she'd not been able to say no to Bradley. Hell, had wanted more, had let him do whatever he wanted to her, for as long as he liked. He too was a very dominant man. Had held her down, and she'd only wanted more at the time, had wanted all of him, however she could get him. Am I in trouble? Izzy suddenly asked her. Yes, those men. Piper sighed. How do you explain this to a human? They are all very possessive creatures. Creatures? On that note, Piper. I swear the man growled right at me, and more than once. I've never had a man do that. It was odd, but at the same time kind of turned me on even more. Interesting. Izzy. Edward, did he happen to tell you anything that would seem like you now belong to him in any way, shape, or form? Wolves had to be careful of what they say. Human mates were not like wolves, had to take it slow with them. Yes, he told me, and I quote, "Don't you dare leave, you are mine now." Oh, that was not good. He definitely laid his claim on Izzy. She was his mate. No wolf would ever say those words to anyone that was not their mate. Definitely in trouble, Elsie's why. She sighed and looked at her friend a little apologetically. Edward likely believes you are actually his now. That man is going to hunt you to the ends of the earth to get you back. Saw Izzy bite her lip. It was just a one-night thing. I even managed to sneak out and leave in the morning. The man was out cold. How? She was curious about that. It did sound as though Eddie and his wolf had mated her. Snuck right out of the room, but that other guy must have woken him somehow. Not that I saw him go in the room. He came after me, and that's when he told me I wasn't allowed to leave him. But you did. Yeah, the oddest damn thing. Mr. Yummy I saw go running across the estate as I drove away. Never seen anything move so fast in all my life. Not good. He was hunting you, I'd say. It got really weird after that, Piper. His brother, I saw him wrestle this massive wolf that shot out in front of my car and was stalking me in my car. I never seen a wolf that big before. It was not normal. Then Harry, you said his name was, latched onto that wolf and was fighting with it, yelled at me to go. I went. It was the craziest damned thing I've ever seen. I imagine so. Piper nodded. She was definitely Edward's mate. No doubt about it, and her leaving him had pissed him right off, set his wolf loose to claim her in wolf form. She was bloody lucky Harry had been there to stop it. Wondered now just how long it was going to take Edward to hunt Izzy down and cajole her into being his human girlfriend, to get her back to the pack and claim her, turn her. Once she was a pack member. If Bradley asked her any questions at all about Piper, or Izzy had any guilt about knowing that Brandon was Bradley's, and she likely would once she was turned and understood her place within the pack, how things worked, how Brandon was technically the heir to that pack. She was likely going to tell him. Chapter 25. Brad POV. They arrived in Olympia, both he and Eddie not overly happy with either of the current situations for that matter. He had a mate he could not send and a son to that woman, and they were actively running away from him, or from Alpha Timothy. At this point, that man had threatened to separate her from her son, and she'd bolted clear across to the other side of the Pacific Ocean. Eddie, stupidly enough, laid claim to a human girl, who had no idea he was her mate and had also run off, away from him, clear across the Pacific Ocean to be with her employer. Who was his runaway mate, so technically her Luna, if Bradley could sort this bloody mess out that was, and he was determined to do so. Had a goddess-gifted mate out there, was going to claim her the minute he could. Bradley also knew it was also what Benson wanted. They both wanted their mate. It was annoyingly frustrating that the moon goddess herself would do this to them, allow them to have a mate they couldn't send, and then allow her to send him out and cause her great pain. Why, he had no bloody idea. It was cruel, is what it was. Though when they had tracked Izzy's credit card and seen that she had bought a plane ticket to Sydney to follow Piper, it made Bradley wonder about their bond yet again, not for the first time, just how connected those two were. Perhaps the moon goddess had seen fit to draw them together. They both had man issues of the same nature. No trust, been hurt through no fault of their own, and run away from that pain. The four of them walked into Wolf Airlines, the she-wolf manning the front desk, smiled right at him and his men. Alpha Bradley, please go right into the lounge. She'd waved them though a heavy set of double doors, and they'd pushed into the private lounge that Wesley and Terrence owned. Stood on a loft platform that overlooked the lounge itself. It was a large room with a dozen dark wood tables and comfortable white leather chairs, 6 to a table. The carpet was black, and the bar where he could see both West and Terrence leaning chatting away was manned by a male wolf, dressed in pack colors. The bar was large, at least 16 feet long, and had bar stools all along the counter. He could see fully stocked with every kind of alcohol you could think of. As they walked down the stairs into the actual lounge, there was a massive multi-tiered, modern chandelier with circular crystal hanging tiers that all fell at odd angles. And spaced out around the room were minimalist-style circular 2-tiered chandeliers that, linked in with the one hanging by the stairs, seemed more like his father's style than West's, likely though this business was all West. His father had put his architecture skills into the building and designed something very opulent for his son. Might have that man design Piper's new store in Helena when he got her back. The far end of the room had large windows that overlooked his actual airport hangars, where his planes were all standing at gates. Bradley could see West's white jet out there on the tarmac waiting for them. Thank the goddess, he had an alliance with this man. That jet was going to be his lifesaver, he imagined. Watched as both West and Terrence turned and watched them come down the stairs, leaned away from the bar and extended a hand to him as he approached them. He even offered him and his men all a drink. After the meet and greet was done, Bradley accepted the drink. He could actually use one. His whole bloody life was in turmoil right now. took a sip of the 20-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey and sighed, "Trust West to stock the best." Not that the man ever really drank much, never seen him drink more than a single glass of anything ever, usually sat and swirled his drink, but rarely actually drank it. He'd never asked why, not that curious he guessed. Asked how the two of them were doing, Terence all smiles, his triplets due within the month. West had a pup on the way to now, but not due for a few months either. Told him it was going to be a boy. Was happy about that. His new little brothers, twin boys, arrived a few weeks ago, and he was glad to have brothers, no more sisters, chuckled about it. Bradley was a little curious about Terence being here, with his mate Ella, due within the month. Didn't seem concerned that his mate would go into early labor and he'd miss their birth. He was currently 2 hours from his pack, and Bradley didn't think that if his mate was that close to having his pup he'd want to be anywhere but near her just in case she delivered early. Terence was way too laid back, though that was who he was. Nothing ever seemed to bother that man, not even now as an actual alpha. He was still happy to lean back in his chair and chat as though life was easy. They all went and sat down at a table, and West sent his bartender off to get food. Apparently, this lounge had a fully staffed kitchen out the back. He'd not shown them a menu but had ordered steaks for all of them plus 2 large share plates of entrees for while they waited for the main meals. Both plates stretched from one side of the table to the other, clearly catered to wolves' appetites. They chatted about pack life. West and Terence were polite enough not to bring up how he had no idea about having a son out there and currently halfway around the world, with a she-wolf that passed herself off as human all the time. This was not the first time it would have happened in the wolfen world, and it was unlikely going to be the last time that an alpha had no idea about a child out there. Alphas slept around a lot, and there was always that possibility. Mates left for all manner of reasons as well. Even West's own mate, Joanne, had left him 10 years ago, then she'd come back to pledge loyalty and left again, only to have West hunt her down and drag her back. Now they were happy and mated once more. A pup on the way, the man did look happy. Life just didn't always go to plan. Some wolves were just not lucky enough to get what they wanted right away, or at all, or had to fight tooth and nail to get what they wanted. Unlike Harry his Delta, who just smiled at his girlfriend Betsy the day she had walked into the pack house, the first full moon after her 18th birthday, she'd smiled right at him and stated, "Mine. Come here and bite me," with a half giggle, and Harry had done just that. He'd been 18 himself. Just a few months older than she was. That lucky bastard had been with his mate since they were both 15, and then was granted her as his goddess-gifted mate when she was 18. They'd only ever been with each other, never had eyes for anyone else, not even as teenagers without wolves. It seemed both West and Terence had looked up his Piper, and they were very impressed with the woman. Not only was she worth a bloody small fortune, she was well-known, well-liked and respected within the human world. West was curious as to how Bradley was going to pull her in from the human life she had created for herself. Noted himself, she had separated herself from the wolfen world and appeared to be human in more ways than one. Commented that Joanne was difficult, being on her own for so long out in the human world. She didn't really like taking orders, was used to doing her own thing, and often just raised an eyebrow at him and stated, "Not going to happen," and would walk off. Played by her own rules. Bradley sighed and shook his head. He had no idea himself, gently so, and likely humanly publicly so. Cooper had laughed. A big lavish human wedding with lots of human photographers and whatnot was my suggestion. West and Terence thought that it was likely a good idea. Couldn't just have a designer of her caliber disappear, would likely set off a human world search. Bradley agreed. The wedding would also have to encompass both human and wolfen guests. Due to who she was, that was going to be a logistical nightmare. But he was kind of hoping that with Piper in the industry already she would be able to handle that, and, if not, he was certain, with Isabel's background, she would be able to. Came from a wealthy human family, and from what he'd heard, her sister's wedding had been massive. So likely something Izzy was used to handling. Tia arrived with Thomas in tow, her mate, both Eddie and Harry's parents, and he watched her eyes land right on her son, Eddie, and then stalked right towards him. She was a tall, well-trained woman, an elite warrior within his pack. For that matter, Thomas trailed her casually. She was very hot-headed and had already torn strips of him over the phone, and didn't look like she was even close to being calmed down. Saw Eddie stand up with a heavy sigh and mutter, "Here we go," under his breath. Bradley gestured for both West and Terrence to stay seated. They had both noted the anger rolling off the woman stalking across the room, and their wolves naturally reacted to it. "She's Eddie's mother," he'd told them. Tia came to a halt right in front of her son and stood staring up at him. She herself was 6'2", only 2 inches shorter than her son, glared right at the man, then shocked everyone when her open hand struck his face, in a loud resounding slap to his face, grated out angrily at him, "Are you so impatient? Did I teach you nothing about humans?" Bradley watched Timber surfaced at the attack on his human and snarl right at her, only to have them put her hand right in his face and point a finger at him. "I'm not afraid of you. Back off, Timber," she snarled right back at his wolf. Saw Timber back off after a moment, left Eddie glaring at her, his jaw tight. She was an elite-class warrior and could take him and his wolf on, if she wanted to, would be a good match for him in a fight. Likely wouldn't win, but do a fair bit of damage to him. Human Edward, she is human, and you lay claim to her. Mate her from what I understand, for the love of the goddess. You stupid fool. What if you can't get her back? "I'm going to," Eddie stated flatly. "Oh, and you think, just because you're handsome like your father here, she'll just fall at your feet?" Eddie did actually look like his father. He had blonde hair and hazel green eyes, whereas Harry looked more like Tia, with brown hair and hazel blue eyes. "No," Eddie admitted. "You're right on that. Ask your father what it took to get me to come around. Bloody tried to use that stupid gamma charm on me all the time. Pissed me off to the point I beat him several times." Saw Thomas smiled and nod. Didn't even deny it. Bradley knew that Thomas was very proud of who his mate had been, so strong and unbreakable even for him, loved that she could just stare him down and take no crap. It was Thomas that stopped the closed fist of his mate as she tried to punch her son. It appeared she was spoiling for a fight. Wanted a piece of her own son for maybe screwing up his mate bond to a human girl. "Tia, calm down." Bradley finally stood up and interjected himself into the situation. It was getting out of hand. "We do actually know where she is. Used her credit card and went to Australia. I will bring her back. I will talk to her myself." "Oh, and you think she is going to listen to you? After your harassment, in an effort to get to Piper?" She snapped at him. Benson bristled inside of him and surfaced himself to show his disapproval of her lack of respect for her alpha, growled right at her, low and menacingly. Watched her bow her head slightly as she realized what she had done. Draw in a calming breath and then apologize to him for her words and tone. "Please just go back to the pack, Tia. I will deal with Isabel, and it will get sorted out, or at least get her back to the pack so she can be assimilated or learn about what is going on so she can make a proper decision." Saw her look right at him. Her expression softened. "Isabel? Such a pretty name. I thought it was Izzy." He nodded. "Isabel Jenkins. She actually is very stubborn and loyal to Piper, just like you were to my mother. Arnauta Lily, headstrong even against me. Tried to put me in my place once already, called me some not-so-nice names too. You'll love her. I see a lot of you in her," he told her with a smile at the end, trying to appease her. "Well, I hope she beats him one, for his behavior," she muttered. "I'm sure she probably will at some point." Bradley smiled. He could actually see that happening at some point. Eddie does actually feel bad about what he and his wolf did. "I believe Timber has been sulking since she left." Saw Tia's eyes widen and then moved to her son. She huffed and shook her head, then stepped over to Eddie and hugged him. "Just don't do anything else, stupid son," she murmured. Thomas handed Bradley all their passports and looked right at him. "Alpha, if I may have a word in private." He'd spoken it as a question, but Bradley got the feeling by the look on the man's face that they would be having a conversation. Likely one posed by his own father, and not to be had over the phone for all to hear. Bradley nodded. He narrowed his eyes on Tia for a good 20 seconds to make sure she understood he was in charge, not that he hadn't been for 11 years now, then walked away with Thomas to sit at another table. Across the room, in the Wolfen world, was not private in any way. Wolf's hearing would pick it up. Stepping away was just a common courtesy. Opened a mind link to the man. Alpha, Hadley told your father, you have a son with Piper Whitlock. Bradley knew it. The damned girl couldn't keep her mouth shut. He'd specifically asked her not to say anything about the boy to their father, yet she had gone ahead and done so. He'd asked purely because the fewer people that knew, the less likely it was to get out and the safer they would be. Yes, apparently so. He acknowledged. Your father is greatly concerned about how this came about? Oh, is he now? Then you must be referring to the Ice Moon Pact agreement that father never saw fit to show me. Regarding the Whitlock women, and I will be having a word with him about that when I get home. Considering it's my bloody head on the line, he grated out. Was very angry about that, in fact. The child Bradley, how was he conceived, we need to know. It could well start a war, and Ice Moon Pact is much larger than ours. He could actually hear the concern in the former Gamma's voice. He was also well aware of just how large the Ice Moon Pact was, nearly 3 times the size of his own, and they would not win a war against them, not even come close to it. She was in my bed one night when I got home. He shrugged. It was the truth. What can I say? A naked she-wolf in my bed. Did she give consent? He was asked instantly. Didn't say no. Bradley answered him, did say please if I recall correctly, begged me not to stop at one point, and told me she wanted all of me. And that is what she got, all of me. Though I had no idea who she was to me at the time. He could only presume Thomas had been informed of all the details by his father, and that was why they were having this chat right now. I thought she was just a she-wolf itching for time with her alpha. Saw Thomas sigh heavily. I hope that is what she tells her people, from her mother's pack, if not Bradley. I understand the ramifications. Alpha Timothy already told me what he would do, and that he would be taking her word over mine as well. It would have been bloody nice if father had shown me that agreement. Perhaps I would have known who she was. That's unlikely from my understanding of it, Bradley. But yes, he should have told you. We're all annoyed with that. Though he did believe. I don't bloody care what he believed, Bradley cut him clean off for a thought. I'm the current alpha in charge, have been for a bloody long time, in fact. It's my damned life on the line, not his anymore. I think such formalities are supposed to be handed over before even the actual change of leadership is done. Yes, he grated. Saw the man nod his head. He could not argue with that. It was how it was supposed to be done. Any and all alliance agreements that involved the reigning alpha to pass on to the next alpha had to be formally handed over so that the next alpha in charge knew what the hell was hanging over his head. Literally his head in this case. So that if his actions or any of his pack's actions could be construed as an act of war against another pack, or bring another alpha to his pack with the right to duel him to the death over something, he would know about it and could make sure those set rules were adhered to prevent such things. His father had been lax in his duties, even if he thought that Piper had been collected by her mother's family and returned to the Ice Moon Pact. That agreement with them still stood and held true. There was likely going to be one hell of an alpha-on-alpha yelling match when he got back to his pack, after collecting Piper and his son, and he had no idea how on earth he was going to get her to come with him either. He could apologize, but he had absolutely no idea if that would work, whether or not she would even care for one at this point. The boy, however, he had every right to claim and insist on bringing back to the pack. He was not safe out there as a rogue, though Bradley did not want to use the boy as leverage, use his own son like that. If he did, he would be no better in Piper's eyes than Alpha Timothy was. At this point, that was a last resort, really just wanted to sit down with her and see if they could talk it out. Though the last time she'd come face to face with him had not gone down so well, Hadley by his side and him insisting on her getting the gown she wanted. No more of that. Her own mother could take her shopping from now on. Their father's unit could go with her for protection instead of his. This time he would be approaching her without Hadley around, and he was going to clear that misunderstanding up as soon as he possibly could, tell her Hadley was his little sister, had no idea if she would believe him. Didn't know if she even knew his father had a second chance mate. Though she would have been in the pack, 10 at the time Hadley was born, but would have been going through her own grief at the loss of both her parents, and likely also felt completely abandoned by the pack itself. No one had looked after her. He had absolutely no idea how she survived on her own inside the pack, on her own at such a young age. There had been no one to care for her ever. Her life inside the pack had certainly not been a good one. So getting her to come home, to be part of a pack once more, could well be a very difficult thing. She was a rogue now, and he had no hold over her at all. He couldn't just order her to do it. She'd likely stare at him and then laugh. He didn't want to threaten her in any way. That would just make her more resistant to coming home, more likely to hate pack life. Probably didn't like that now. So he was aiming to talk to her, to at least try and persuade her into coming home, to let Brandon come home to the pack, to see what his own world looked and felt like, to be inside a pack. Bradley had no idea at all if Brandon had any interactions with wolves at all, other than Alpha Timothy, and that man had only threatened them on both occasions. Nothing good would have come from those interactions. The boy might well not be interested at all. Bradley had no idea what Piper had told him about wolves or life within a pack, but if she had told him anything, it wasn't likely going to be anything good. She was unlikely to have any good memories at all. Though she could have told him nothing at all, or she could have told him how uncaring and horrible it was, as was likely her experience. He did not know, was going to have to find out the hard way by asking the boy to come home, or if he wanted to come and see what pack life looked like. He was a complete stranger to his own child. There was no connection to his wolf Aspen, and that in itself could see Brandon outright reject him as his father and refuse to come home as well until there was a connection. He was not happy about that thought, and neither was Benson, for that matter. Looked at Thomas. Go back to the pack, Thomas. I don't even know at this point if I can bring her in. She thinks Hadley is my mate. And I don't even know if she raised Brandon with any knowledge of our kind. It could take a while. I suggest he pull his A*SS out of retirement and relieve my brother of alpha duties so Timothy doesn't come to duel him over Piper's treatment, when he likely has no knowledge of what is going on either. Put the one responsible for this particular mess back in the firing line, so to speak. Saw Thomas stand up. It'll work itself out, Brad. Just be calm, polite, and don't force the situation. Forcing the situation is not my style. That is her own family's, and I wouldn't be in this situation if her damned cousin hadn't threatened to take Brandon away from her in order to get her to go home with him. Only made her bolt clear out of the country. We'll call him. Try to sort that out as well. You do that. Because somehow, I don't think after all his threats, and there was more than one, Piper is going to want to go to Ice Moon Pack to meet with the Whitlock elders at all, and he didn't think she would be willing. Timothy should have led with, I think I'm your cousin. What pack were you from? Not a threat to haul her ass in. Should have explained himself to her to gain her trust. That would likely have gone a long way to helping the situation, and she may have even gone with him, or allowed the Whitlock elders to come to her at her store for a sit-down conversation. Chapter 26. Eddie POV. Hearing that Bradley had a son with Piper Harper made his heart ache. That little bit more, for the lost Luna to his pack. He'd known she'd suffered greatly, had just never been able to do anything about it at all, and he had tried to. He searched the pack, hunted all over the place, gotten turned around so many times inside his own pack, looking for Piper. He'd nearly ripped his own hair out. Had been able to feel it when she was in pain, and desperately needed to comfort her for a very long time, but he'd just never been able to find her. Had not known who she was, what she looked like, where she lived in the pack, knew nothing of her, only her distress over what was happening to her. He'd tried desperately to hunt her down the day she'd actually rejected Bradley. He'd known she was somewhere inside the pack house, likely had to be looking right at Bradley to make that rejection, but still he'd not been able to find her. His fruitless search of the pack house that night had made him lose her altogether. Because while he was searching the pack house for her, she had been running for the border. By the time he realized this, was headed for the border himself, he had felt her sever from him completely. Their connection just vanished. He'd known instantly that what he had feared for years had actually happened. She had left the pack entirely, severed all ties with it, unable to cope any longer with the pain their alpha. Her mate was unwittingly causing her. He'd had no idea, and trying to tell a wolf they had a mate somewhere and his going off to have asterisk with another was killing her would not work. There was no way any wolf would believe that without scenting his mate, and that she was within his own pack. Not a hope in hell of believing it. Only scenting out your mate could convince you, and your wolf you had a mate. Bradley was all about goddess-gifted mates, wanted to find that one that belonged to him and his wolf. If he had scented out his mate, they would have been together. There would have been a Luna ceremony and a massive celebration, for sure. So Eddie knew that the man had not scented her out, had not come across his mate, and he'd been home for full moon balls during the course of those 3 years. Hell, he'd been home on a full moon when there was no mating ball as well. That night she had not just rejected him, but the entire pack. Their western border was not that far from the city limits, and once she severed ties to the pack, Eddie was unable to track her at all, and not actually knowing what she had looked like at the time meant he could very well have come across her on the outskirts of the human city of Helena and not even known it was her at all. Now he knew why he couldn't ever detect her. That pendant she wore made her unscentable. It was a logistical nightmare. No wonder he and Timber had been turned around constantly, couldn't scent her, couldn't recognize her in his human form or his wolf form, and he had been using all of Timber's senses to try and hunt her, couldn't it seemed, and not his fault. Not that that mattered. Had just made them feel inadequate in their ability as a gamma. Thought they were broken, that their gamma instincts were off, and he couldn't fulfill his duty. He knew Bradley had given up dating and sleeping around after that night, when the next day, between Doc Samuel and Eddie's telling him what they thought was going on. But the damage to his mate was already done, and she'd finally had enough and fled. Now as they flew across the Pacific Ocean, he was worried about her once again. Not even Eddie had thought there would be a child between the two of them. It was just one night together. Bradley had told him he'd not nodded the girl. But to know just how much she had suffered inside the pack, and then to become pregnant to her mate, who never knew who she was, to have that constant reminder for the rest of her life. Was the moon goddess so cruel to one she-wolf, to put her through so much, and then to give her a constant reminder of what she could never have? It must have hurt her even more. Eddie had finally seen a picture of the boy, Brandon, he'd been told was his name. He actually looked more like Piper than Bradley, had her hair and skin tone, but had his father's very unique eyes. Made Eddie wonder how she'd handled seeing him stare up at her when he'd first been born. Had it caused her more pain? To see in the photos that the boy already has his wolf, had seen it on Cooper's phone, had the same white wolf eyes of Piper's wolf Harper. Was definitely a Whitlock more so than a Drake. He could only hope that had helped her with raising the boy. Cooper actually had quite a few photos of the boy, of Piper herself, and of Piper and the boy together. He'd spent the evening and morning watching them apparently, snapped a badass load of pictures, had even followed them as stealthily as he could on their morning run. Told Eddie she and Brandon had a really good bond, and that was a giant relief to him, seeing the two of them together, laughing and smiling before going on that run eased some of his own pain, his own guilt at not being there for her. He knew they were flying to help Bradley bring Piper in, that he was going to be needed with all his gamma abilities in full swing in all likelihood. Bradley had already explained to him what he'd sensed on that first encounter with her. It was what Eddie was expecting. It was what they were all expecting, even Bradley. Though Eddie didn't know if they were going to bring her back into the pack, she had experienced a lot of pain, tremendous amounts of pain, suffered so much that she had left and now lived as a human with a very public human life. Eddie was hoping, knowing who she was now, would kick his instincts in properly. Already knew he could not scent her, had stared hard at the photos of her trying to commit her to his memory, so that he wouldn't need his sense of smell to know who she was. That day, outside of her store, while he'd been trying to console a very upset Hadley over Piper Harper tearing up the picture of the dress she dreamed of wearing one day. Piper had stepped out of her store and looked right at them, each one of them in turn, all of them there for Hadley, had rolled her eyes and walked away. He could only imagine her pain that day too. He'd seen the way she'd actually looked at them, knowingly. She knew who Cooper was, the pack beta, had looked at him, and then Harry, had looked to see how many of her former Alpha's unit were there, and seen all of them. That roll of her eyes, he wasn't sure if that had been at Hadley needing comfort, or if it was because all of her former Pax Alpha unit were standing across the road from her. All of them looking right at her, and had no idea, even now. Years later, after she had left, what she was, who she had been, should have been to them. But he had felt more than annoyance roll off of her, and that something had itched at him. She'd felt kind of familiar to him. But he didn't recall her at all, and so other than watching her walk away down the street and putting a hand on Cooper to stay him, he'd let it go. Perhaps now he should have let Cooper go after her, might have seen the boy sooner. Perhaps she had been off to pick him up from school that day. It had been around the right time. He'd known something was off, but it had been years since he'd felt her, since he'd sensed anything about the Alpha's missing mate. Eddie had to admit, he had forgotten what it felt like to feel her, as the years had passed. The memory of what she felt like to him, or lack of what she felt like to him, had faded, dulled, and eventually passed altogether. He'd had the feeling that day that Piper Harper was not human, was something else, but that had been all he'd known. Now he had to pull himself together. He was going to be needed. All his gamma instincts, which had failed him at every turn where she was concerned, was going to have to pull on everything in him to help ease her pain, get her to calm down and stay calm. From what he knew of her, what he'd researched and was doing on this very flight, gathering intel to help him to help her, Piper Harper was very much more human than a werewolf nowadays. And to his knowledge, none of them had ever seen her wolf at all, a description only from her file of a gray and white wolf. Eddie doubted she had shifted in a very long time. He'd not sensed her wolf at the time, and he should have been able to, even from across the street. His instincts should have picked up on that much about her, but they had not. Perhaps her wolf was too weak after all the years of their mate not recognizing them, mating with others, that she could no longer shift at all. Though both Bradley and Hadley had seen her wolf's eyes, and Harper push forward and be fully on the surface, it had only been brief. So he knew she was not gone altogether. Cooper had also reported that it was her wolf, Harper, and the boy's wolf out on that morning run together, so maybe Harper was there, but only inside Piper's mind. If that was the case, then getting her and Bradley back together could resolve that and bring her wolf back out fully, given time. Though how he was going to concentrate on Piper, when in all likelihood his own mate Izzy would be right next to her, he had no idea. She'd run away from him too. Though he knew that was because she, as a human, had no idea what they were to each other. Even though he'd gotten her to state she was his, and he had claimed her right back, the woman had no understanding at all and so had left. Eddie knew it was because she felt like she'd betrayed Piper to him, knew he worked for Bradley, and that Piper had warned the woman she'd be seduced by him and end up in his bed before she knew it, and Piper had not been wrong about that. But for very different reasons. He'd not seduced Izzy to get Piper's information out of her. That thought had gone out the window the moment his mouth had touched hers. From that moment he'd only wanted to claim Izzy, make her his as had Timber. They'd waited a very long time for their mate and had become impulsive and demanding. All of his wolf's needs to claim, own, and dominate the situation, to take complete control of her had surfaced, and that was what they had done. Only to have her sneak out and run away from them, drive away and tell them she didn't belong to them, when in fact she did belong to him, as he now belonged to her. Now Eddie had to find a way to help his Alpha with his Luna, all the while not claiming his own mate, when she was going to be right in front of him. Both Eddie and Timber knew that they had screwed up everything, needed to get Izzy alone and apologize, ask her out, was the right thing to do. She was human and would need to date him as she would any man in the human world. A long, slow road to becoming his and Timber's, and they wanted her now right next to them, wondered if Bradley would consider helping him first, so he could better focus on Piper in return. They were both currently in a situation where they actually needed each other's help, literally. Eddie needed his Alpha to sit down and talk with his runaway human mate and explain to her about what Eddie was to her, not all of it at once, just to convince her it was very important for her to give him a chance to get to know him. Did not know how this was going to work at all. Didn't even know if they would be able to sort this mess out. It was likely that if Izzy told Piper all that had happened at her sister's wedding with Eddie, Piper would be dead certain Izzy was his mate. She would also know that Eddie would be hunting Izzy to get her back right at this very minute. Might have warned Izzy, if Piper did cling completely to the human world, to her human life that she had created for herself, she might actively warn Izzy away from him, and those two women were very close. Izzy was loyal to Piper, which was a good thing for them to have, considering if Piper could be brought in and Brad could win her over, meant that the Luna and Gamma's mate bond was already there in full swing. It did make him wonder if they had been drawn to each other because of who they should have been to each other. He'd already found out that Izzy had been with Piper for most of the time she'd been away from the pack. Perhaps the goddess had pulled them together. Both of them seemed to need each other. Izzy had that stupid human who wouldn't let go of her, and she'd left him years ago, yet he was still trying to coherence her into a marriage with him. One that, from what he could tell, her father wanted as well. But his Izzy was good and strong-willed, had said no and meant it. Did not want anything to do with that stupid human man, had run away from him and her family, just like Piper had in fact. Wondered if that was what had bonded the women together. He also wondered if Izzy had ever seen Harper on the surface at all. It was a possibility. They had worked together for years. He had no idea how much control Piper had or what type of temperament Harper had either, for that matter. Though Harper had pushed forward and growled at Bradley that day in her studio, and he was very curious about that. As not many mates would growl at each other with full-on aggression, so he didn't know if the rejection she had uttered was valid or not. No one did at this point. They still had to figure that out, and likely first before anything else happened. Landing in Sydney, neither he nor Bradley had gotten a wink of sleep. Cooper and Harry, on the other hand, slept quite well, though Eddie knew he and Bradley had their own concerns. There wasn't even a plan of action at this point. Locate Piper in her hotel, and then go from there. That was it so far. They already knew which hotel Piper was in, had tracked Piper Whitlock's credit card, booked themselves right into the very same hotel, a penthouse suite that would house all four of them. Both he and Bradley needed to sleep before going anywhere near either of their mates, or their tired, agitated wolves would likely shove forward and take what they thought was theirs without a thought to the actual consequences. Eddie could not let Timber out near Izzy at this point. He'd already ripped out of Eddie in a ticked-off rage that she'd run away from him. Had been going to mark her in his wolf form that day, not something that would have gone down well at all. Timber was still unhappy that she had run away, and was not at all happy she'd gone halfway around the bloody world to get away from them. Was not about to let her get away again. She might be human, but she was his human as far as he was concerned, and he was not giving her up, period. Even if she never turned, and remained human after they marked her, and it did happen, Timber was still of the opinion she was his mate, and he wanted her. It had only been Eddie that night with her. Timber had mostly been in control, but had not pushed forward to mate her. His wolf, he knew, was very aggressive and could likely hurt her. Things would be different once they marked her, though. If she accepted them fully, her body would also accept Timber and his wolf's needs. Regardless of how rough he got with her, she would enjoy it. He was not one to be interested in humans. They were not his thing, not his wolf's thing either, but Izzy drove them completely crazy. The minute he'd kissed her, they had just craved her like the air they breathed to keep them alive. He looked at himself in the hotel bathroom mirror. He was showered and clean from their long journey, but he actually did look tired, not something he'd ever recalled looking like before. Already being away from her was starting to take its toll on him. He needed his mate back in his arms. Chapter 27. Izzy POV. Izzy woke up to half a dozen missed calls from her father, and groaned annoyingly as she saw there were 3 calls from an unknown number on her phone's display. Those 3 calls coincided with her father's. It was also a number with Maine's prefix. She had actually switched off her phone after leaving the family estate, had known that her father would be calling her, to either hound her about Philip, or perhaps now after what had gone on with Edward, as he'd introduced himself to her father, to find out just what was going on in her life. Izzy had sighed and stared at the phone's message bank service, which told her there were currently 9 voice messages to be heard. Listen to them in order of receiving them, best to get it all in the right context. The first voice message was from her father, demanding that she come home immediately and explain herself to him. just exactly what was going on. Why Philip had gone to him and told him that he'd been told she and Edward were in fact getting married in around 9 weeks' time. Izzy had stared right at her phone in complete shock. She'd not said that, had told her father that Edward was nothing to her. But it was obvious he had seen the way the man was all over her. After she'd stopped that fight between Edward and Philip that had been brewing, she did recall that Edward had literally carried her right out of the family ballroom. But where had he gotten the getting married thing? She did not know in 9 weeks. What the hell was that? The second voice message was also her father. He seemed quite a bit calmer in this message, just wanted her to call him so he could talk to her about Edward, maybe just trying to cajole her into calling him back. The man even half-heartedly apologized for yelling at her in the first message he'd left. The third message was from an infuriated Philip, who stated that her behavior during Joni's wedding had been completely unacceptable, that if she kept up this type of behavior, he would no longer be willing to marry her. Izzy had nearly laughed out loud. That stupid man still thought he was going to be able to marry her, all because her father said he'd make he. It was never going to happen. Message 4. Once again her father, Isabel sweetheart, I think I may have overreacted somewhat. Edward appears to be an upstanding, wealthy man, and I think it is time you brought him home to introduce your fiancé to us formally. Your mother also agrees with this. Call me back, sweetheart. Izzy rolled her eyes at that message. A wealthy, upstanding man. That just meant her father had actually started looking into Edward Patrick of Drake Industries and had seen the man's bio and had liked it. Nothing more. As for the your mother also agrees, he had likely thrown that in because she was much closer to her mother than her father was all. The fifth message Philip once again Isabel, this Edward character may have money, but he is not aligned to you or your family's needs. I am the better choice. Call me back so we can sort this out once and for all. Though in the background of that call she could hear his current girlfriend calling out to him. To get off the phone she'd brought him lunch so they could eat together. Yes, he was still a pig of a man, she thought. Got a girlfriend and trying to make another girl come home to marry him. It also sounded to her like Philip had also looked into Edward and did not like what he saw. Must be either of two things. Edward had more money than Philip did, or he knew that. Her father was now leaning towards Edward himself. So he was trying to wrest control of the situation. He wanted her father's company and wouldn't get it without marrying into the family. Message 6 once again her father, Isabel, Edward sounds like a proper gentleman. I managed to speak with him, though only briefly. He was about to board a flight home. Now I understand that the two of you had a bit of a fight. I'm certain it can be worked out. Call the man, he wants to apologize to you. Sweet goddess, her own father, had actually managed to contact Edward himself. She could well imagine that phone call, likely a welcome to the family son, had probably gone ahead and invited the man home for dinner as well. Why did this always happen? Always had men trying to control her life. Her father was always trying to marry her off. Philip always still around, though she knew that and just wanted the family company. He could go and chase Cordelia if he wanted the company that bad. He was not about to get it through her. She had no connection to her father's company and intended on keeping it that way. Voice message 7 her actual mother, though off her father's phone, so likely coherenced into it. Honey, it's Mum. Please do call your father back. He's starting to worry to the point that he is not willing to leave the estate home here in Maine and return to his city apartment. Heard her father's voice in the background tell her, it's my bloody house. I will stay as long as I like. Then he'd taken the phone from her mother's hand and grated down the line at her. Isabel Jenkins, if you do not call me back, I will make my way to Drake Industries and find out myself exactly what Edward Patrick's intentions are with my daughter. You call me back right now. Again Izzy rolled her eyes. He would know by now she did not respond to his threats, that she would call him back when she was good and bloody ready, not when he wanted her to. Checked the time of the message. All these calls had been spaced out over the course of the day she had left and flown to Australia, unbeknownst to her family. She had on purpose left her phone turned off because she figured that Edward or Bradley Drake himself would have gotten her mobile number off of Laura as well as her work mobile. Didn't want to speak to either of them possessive arrogant men either. She had really not wanted to deal with any of them, wondered if this constant need to be in control of her was why Piper had left Bradley Drake's company in the first place. He was a man who appeared to be just as relentless as her own father was. They were both like a dog with a bone, just couldn't let it go. Both controlling, possessive men, were bloody everywhere, it seemed, and could hunt and track with all the money they had at their disposal, no escape. Side, she and Piper very much liked to be in full control of their own lives. Neither of them liked to be told what to do. Smiled at thought actually, she had seen Piper go head-to-head with some pretty wealthy and influential people, both man and woman. She just stood there and stared them down. It was like the woman had no fear really. Or at least none that Izzy had seen until Bradley Drake had strolled into her store that day. She'd never seen Piper so rattled, never seen her actually run from anyone. And she had run. Izzy had heard the doors banging closed in quick succession on her way out of the store. Seen the way Bradley had stalked out of her office, not her studio. It was the very first time she had ever seen Piper be anything but cool, calm, and collected. The 8th message was Philip once more. She huffed in annoyance. It's been all day now, Isabel. I am done waiting on you. You're so very childish all the time. You should bloody grow up. I will be marrying Caitlin Bateman. Not you. We are done. Don't call me anymore. Anymore? The man was bloody delusional. She'd never called him not once in all the time she had left him. Finally, the man had given up on her. It was about bloody time. Was happy to hear that message. Damned near hooped with joy to hear it. She really hoped that this Caitlin knew that he was a cheating pig of a man. Though it was very unlikely that the woman knew anything. Hell, if Izzy hadn't gone into her father's office building, impromptu that day, to have dinner with her sister, she would never have seen what he was, been none the wiser, and likely have been married to the man herself. The 9th message was once again her father. Isabel, I am very disappointed in you. I just found out that you have left the country, gone to Australia. This is completely unacceptable. Come home at once, or I will send Philip to collect you. Izzy did actually laugh at that one. Guess her father was unaware of the fact that Philip had called her and told her he'd had enough of her childish behavior. Good luck, father, she murmured softly, amused at the thought of him telling Philip to go and get her and Philip stating no. Probably be the first time he'd ever said it. Philip was going to decline that request. They might be business partners, but without the hope of getting her for himself, he would not lower himself to being a lapdog and come and collect her. Looked at her work mobile and wondered if she dared to turn that one on. Mr. Drake Industries had that number, which also meant so did Edward now in all likelihood. She sat there and stared at it for a very long time, then turned it on. A part of her was very curious as to if what Piper had told her was true. That he would hunt her to the very ends of the earth to get her back. There were several missed calls on the phone, nil messages left, though. There was a text message that stated, Miss Jenkins, my name is Cooper. Please call me back urgently. Who is Cooper? She did not know a Cooper, and there was no Mr. Cooper that she was in contact with that she recalled. But to call her Miss Jenkins, it was likely that this man was one of her father's men, probably just trying to track her down, so they could come and collect her, though when she looked at the message time it had been sent when she had been in LAX on her layover. Then just a few hours ago, a text message that read, Izzy, I'm sorry, I did not mean to raise my voice at you. Please text me back. Let me know you're safe, Eddie. I will be out of contact on a flight, but please let me know you're okay. I'll see you soon, baby. Got herself out of bed and headed right for Piper's room. She was already awake, up and showered. No real surprise there. The woman usually ran at sunrise every day. Showed her the message, biting her lip while Piper read it. On a flight? He'll see me soon? Piper sighed, likely used his connections to track your credit card and got your flight details, on his way to collect you, Izzy. It was just one night. He was clearly crazy. Not to him. Piper shook her head. Come on, Piper. It was just like, really good asterisk. That does not denote a relationship. In his world, it does. I'm sorry, Izzy, I did try to warn you about him. Piper had warned her she knew that. So what do I do then? I don't know, Piper sighed, though I would not specifically tell him the word no, or that you don't want to be with him. What? Why not? She could feel little alarm bells going off inside of her mind. Might not go down so well. It's very complicated, Izzy. He is likely coming to collect you. So you can be swayed into dating him. He will want that, and likely won't take no for an answer. He's nutso. Piper half laughed at her. Yes, they all are. Must have what they want. Regardless as to what anyone else wants. And those 4 men. They're the top of the food chain. No one dares tell them no. It is practically unheard of. You did. Izzy reminded her. I did. Piper nodded at her, hurt to blazes to be honest with you. Bradley took your no, didn't come after you. Izzy stated curiously. He didn't know I had said no and I left the moment I said it. He was asleep and unaware at the time. Really? I left Edward while he was asleep too. She half smiled now, so much in common. There is a difference though. Edward knew who he was sleeping with. Bradley did not. I was just another girl in his bed to him, she shrugged. Edward desired you. Wanted you and got to have you. In his mind, you're his now. You agreed, told him you were his. I only said that to get the actual asterisk, Piper. He was holding out on me, made me say it to get what I wanted from him at the time. I understand that. But that's the thing, Izzy, you did actually tell him, agreed to be his. So, this is a nightmare, Izzy muttered. Watched as Piper actually laughed softly, welcome to my world. Don't know if I want to be part of your world. It's weird to be honest. Really bloody weird. She sank down on Piper's bed, do I even get a choice? Piper sat next to her. There is usually a choice. Think carefully though, Izzy. Edward could in fact be your Mr. Right. Yeah, right. That man can have any woman he wants, I imagine. Look at him. He'll only have eyes for you now, Izzy. What? She wondered if that was true. Could she date a man like Edward? Could she keep a man like Edward? Satisfy a man like him? There were much prettier women out there, some of them with way more asterisk experience than her, willing to do asterisk acts that she wasn't. Edward did seem to be a very dominant man. He was likely to have more than the one fetish she'd seen. Izzy, I'm not going to tell you what to do where he is concerned. Just do what is right for you. Maybe that includes dating him, to see if you like him. Piper, you told me to stay away from him. Now you're telling me to date him. That is very confusing. You've slept with him now. So things have changed in that department. No matter my feelings about Drake Industries, you have the right to see for yourself and choose what you want as well. You might like it there, fit right in. Just never fit in. It's why I left. Izzy was more confused now than before. She didn't know what to do. Should I text him back? That is up to you, is all Piper said. Izzy wandered back to her room and stared at the phone, at the message Eddie had left her. He'd started it with an apology, wanted to know if she was safe, told her his plans, again wanted to know if she was okay, and then told her he'd see her soon. They were the words of a boyfriend. Not a man who she had just met, sounded caring and worried about her. She sighed, tried to tell herself not to read anything into it. He would be just like the rest. His eyes would wander to some other woman. He was the most charming of the group. That's what Piper had told her. Sat and stared right at that message for a very long time. I'm fine, she finally texted him back and left it at that. Tossed the phone onto the bed a second later. Goddess, what had she gotten herself into with this man? Chapter 28. Piper POV. Piper sat watching Izzy. The woman was all over the place about Edward, had stopped calling him Mr. Yummy, she'd noted. Was very confused about that text message he had sent to her via the work mobile. Piper, however, was not confused by it at all. He was upset that his human mate had run away from him, was honest in his apology for yelling at her, likely felt bad and thought it contributed to her running away from him. His concern for her safety and well-being was completely genuine. The whole "I'll see you soon" just meant that he was on his way here, coming to see her. Wanted to be near her. In all likelihood, he and his wolf were anxious that she had up and left and gone halfway around the world. She was his mate, and he and his wolf had scared her off. His only desire now would be to fix it. Placate her and win her over. They would not like that she was alone and without a pack for protection. She was human and therefore very vulnerable in their eyes. If she'd been a werewolf, well, she would have understood everything and there would be no problem. But Izzy was not. Piper had the feeling that Izzy would text him back. The woman was drawn to him. That much was clear to her. Humans could feel the bond. It was just not the same as a wolf. To them it was a strong asterisk connection, and when touched by their mate, though they did not get those hot electric tingles, they still felt like it was the most erotic touch they'd ever felt, craved it. It still felt completely amazing to them. Made them hot and needy, wanton, easily swayed into their mate's bed on any given occasion. From what Izzy had told her, she just couldn't help herself where Edward was concerned. Did not understand how she'd wound up in bed with him. Piper knew that Izzy was not the type to sleep around. Dated, yes, but didn't just go having asterisk with anyone, had rules. She was actively looking for Mr. Right, and according to Izzy, Mr. Right would be happy to wait for asterisk with her. He would not look at another woman while they were out together, want her to feel comfortable with their relationship, and only have asterisk when she was ready to. Always came back to Philip, who had cheated on her, scarred that woman's heart. Philip had not been her first lover, but he had been her first real serious relationship, and she had thought at the time he was perfect and had intended on marrying him. Then that Essopy had not appreciated what he'd had. A strong and capable woman, with a mind of her own, who was intelligent and loyal to him, she did not believe in multiple asterisk partners at the same time. Thought it was icky was the word she had used once. When Izzy saw a man's eyes tracking another woman while they were dating, out on a date, having a meal, or seeing a movie, she ended it. Got rid of him, believed he would not be faithful. Philip's betrayal had sowed doubt into Izzy's heart, and unfortunately, Piper hadn't thought any man was ever going to live up to the woman's standards. Now there was Edward. He, on the other hand, would live up to that standard. His eyes would never wander, not even if a parade of naked women or she-wolves walked past behind Izzy. He would not care about that. He only had eyes for one, his mate, and that was Izzy. It must be nice to have that. She sighed as pain touched her a little. She would never know, her and the mate bond. It was just pure pain. That literally gutted her and ripped her apart. Cursed as she was. But she would not deny her friend the right to feel loved and cherished, and Edward would do just that, give her everything she desired if Izzy let him in. Piper knew she was likely going to lose Izzy at some point now. It was just a matter of time, she supposed. Had no idea how she was going to deal with that. Or even if she could be happy about it. Not considering where she was going. She was going to lose her best and only real friend to a place that had caused her nothing but agony and heartache. Wondered absently if she could get Izzy to promise her not to tell them anything about Brandon. It would be difficult for her to do. Especially once she was initiated into the pack and shifted, which is when she would really understand the connection wolves had to their offspring and their mates. Piper was not about to upend her life. She'd left all that heartache and pain behind her, left pack life for a very good reason, and no one and nothing was going to drag her back into it, so she could see all those mated wolves happy and loved up. No, she was not going to be forced to watch and be constantly reminded of what she could never have. She certainly didn't want to be around wolves, didn't want nor need to come across another mate who would not send her out and cause her all that pain and agony which she would not be able to hide from Brandon. There was no way he wouldn't see it or hear it, let alone have to watch her waste away and get all sickly again. No, she was human now and she would stay that way. They all ate breakfast and Izzy put a call into the realtor about her apartment, was concerned about the money Piper was shelling out for this suite. Piper was not, it was just money, she had plenty of it, and Izzy knew that as well. It wasn't like she went splashing it all over the place, she just mostly bought stuff for Brandon with it, or took him on holidays other than that it stayed in the bank. Piper had never had much growing up inside that pack, no one to buy her new clothes or toys to play with, not even a computer to help with her schoolwork as she'd gotten older. She had just learned to use the pack house laundry of a night time to do her own washing, use the lost and found bins and the donated clothing racks to find clothes that fit her. She had eaten 3 meals a day in the pack house dining room like all wolves could. No one cared that she did. Hell, no one noticed her doing it. To keep her schooling up to date, she had used the pack house library computers and their Wi-Fi. She'd cut her own hair when it got too long to manage and bothered her, just usually spent her days sitting inside her parents' house, missing them mostly. Until one day she had come home from school to find it had been cleaned out and completely empty. She'd been 11 at the time and had not understood that at all. Didn't know where she was supposed to live if not in her family home, so had taken to living in the pack house basement where she had found some of her parents' furniture stored, to still feel close to them. It was a place where the pack stored unwanted things until clean-out day once a year, or others came through to look at the stuff and see if they wanted any of it. She'd stayed there in the basement until she'd felt that first pain of betrayal, and had found that abandoned cabin as she'd been trying to escape the pain. That place had not been much, but it had been out in the middle of the forest, away from everyone that could hear her cries of agony and pain. So that was where she had stayed after turning 18. When not buried in her work, she'd gotten used to being alone a long time before turning 18, so living out there alone in the woods was nice. No one had bothered her out there, no one ran into her out there and blamed her for not moving out of the way, so she'd made it neat and tidy, put in some curtains for privacy, and had even managed to drag a mattress from the pack house basement storage area to the cabin to sleep on. It had been simple and basic, and if anyone did stroll in there, well, they wouldn't send her anyway. She'd seen rogue attacks from that cabin over the years. None of them had smelled her as they had crept past the cabin. None of them had come for her, also unable to detect her, just like everyone in this pack. She had even been the one to report a rogue or several sneaking about the packwoods, had alerted the pack beta Cooper, never the alpha himself. Couldn't deal with that man's voice inside her head. Cooper had always taken her seriously, told her to get to a safe place and hide if she couldn't get to the pack house. Being that she was a female and reporting rogues out in a heavily wooded part of the pack, he likely worried for her safety, she supposed, worried that those rogues would find her and have a piece of her. They couldn't have what they couldn't detect, and they never scented her out, just like the pack didn't. She didn't fear them, just stood perfectly still and let them pass by, and now she was one. Piper sighed and pulled herself from her memories as Izzy tapped her arm. "Where were you?" she asked. "Nowhere in particular." She half smiled at the woman. "Not ready for at least 3 weeks, still got tenants in there." "It's not a big deal, Izzy. I can afford the hotel. Wouldn't have booked it if I couldn't. Come on, don't worry about it," and as if to prove it, told her and Brandon to get dressed. They were all going shopping. Piper had seen the time of Edward's text message. If he was leaving right before he texted Izzy, and it had read that way, the man wouldn't get here for another 12 hours or so, depending on layovers. It could well be longer than that, depending on where he had been when he texted Izzy. On the East Coast where Izzy had been? Montana where the pack was? Or on the West Coast? She didn't know, though, if they had still been looking for her at her stores were all on the West Coast. So at the earliest, late tonight, would be when he arrived, and he'd be jet-lagged and all cramped from flying, and wouldn't be looking for until tomorrow at least. So today was a carefree day for all. Piper let Izzy know this. After she had looked over her shoulder for like the 10th time when out shopping, she seemed to understand and settle, was actually able to relax and enjoy their shopping trip to the Pitt Street Mall. Piper bought new clothes for all of them. Today was her treat, just to show Izzy she didn't care about the money side of things, and they were all shopped out by 2 p.m. and returned to the hotel to sag down on the couch. She and Izzy had coffee and cake while Brandon set up his new PS5, so he could play online games with his friends back home in the States. Picked up her phone when it rang at 21:30 and was more than a little surprised to see her neighbor Ingrid's number flashing on the screen. Answered it. "Hi Ingrid, what is wrong?" she asked. Ingrid would never just call her for no reason, only ever when she saw something suspicious in the street. That woman did love to sit in her living room and drink tea or coffee and watch her neighbors, lived across the road from Piper. "Piper, are you moving and did not tell me?" "What, no?" Piper frowned. That was a very odd question to be asked. "I'm on an impromptu trip to my store. Soul, I'm out of the States, but not moving. Why?" "Well, I'm standing in my living room, watching people, like 4 of them, quite big guys, and they have parked what looks like a moving van in your driveway." "What?" She was more than shocked by this news, and considerably confused as well. "Yes, Piper, oh hang on, there is another vehicle pulling up, a SUV, and they're all talking to each other. Unloading boxes. Hey, your garage is open now." "What the hell?" She muttered, had to be bloody Alpha Timothy, trying to force her hand once again. Packing up all her stuff and moving it back to his pack. I'm not moving, Ingrid, call the police. Those people are thieves. Oh my, right away, Piper. Wait, what company is that mover van from? Can you get me a logo? I'll have to call the company and tell them what is going on. Tell them I did not approve it. I can't see it from here, I'll go over there and demand they stop at once. No, just call the police. Don't risk yourself, Ingrid. All right. I'll do it now, the line disconnected. That self-centered, arrogant asshole was still trying to force her to move to his pack and had actually sent movers to do so. He thought just because she was unaffiliated he could push her around. Well, he was in for a rude shock. She was Piper Harper, a well-known human designer. If he wanted a war with her, she would give him one, a very public human world one. That man could not just drag her from her life and force her into his pack, not without Brandon as leverage, and she and her boy were halfway around the world. Damned alphas always thinking they could have whatever they wanted. Likely, he just wanted a piece of her profit line. She knew any pack-affiliated business meant that the wolf had to hand over between 30% and 50% of their profit margin. It went right into the pack funds. It was each wolf's way of being a productive member of the pack, showing their support to help better the pack. Give it funds to upgrade buildings and schools and build new buildings, etc. Well, she had worked damned hard to get to where she was, and no damned alpha was going to step into her life and claim what she had accomplished all by herself, on her own, with no help from them. He could bloody well shove it up that ass of his. She had lawyers, just needed confirmation that it was him so she could take that bastard on. Charge him with theft. Hell, she had a working studio in that house. Could well be considered that he was out to steal her designs as well. They were worth quite a bit, some of them upwards of 50,000 or more. Bloody grand theft she'd be charging him with, and make it very public she would. That man was going to have to back off and explain himself to the humans. Got a multimedia text from Ingrid, a photo of the moving truck's logo, stared right at it nearly dumbfounded. Black Haven Moving Co., and the photo showed the pack's logo in the bottom corner of Black Lake with a rising moon coming from it. The phone number and address along the bottom of the logo were all Black Haven pack details. Then along the very bottom under that were the words printed in black capitals, owned by Drake Industries. What the hell was going on? Sent back a thank you text for the info. Now, she had no idea what to do. She could take on Alpha Timothy Avery, not a big issue. But Bradley Drake himself, she had secrets from that man, bit her lip and wondered if Brandon was in fact still a secret at all. If Bradley had tracked her to her home and then taken it upon himself to enter her home, he'd have seen photos of Brandon, likely have recognized his own eyes. To track down her home address, though, he had to have figured out who she actually was, a Whitlock, and that name would crop up in his pack's database. Shit, she muttered. She could not take on Bradley Drake. He was a lawyer himself, and a simple DNA test, which she knew he would insist on, would prove Brandon to be his. Even in the human world, he'd be granted access to the boy. It would likely be a very messy, public battle. Either that or he would go to the Wolfen Council and just claim she had kept him an alpha from his heir, had not told him about the child, and an alpha claiming his heir from a rogue female. She did not stand a chance. The Wolfen Council would grant him all rights to his son and heir, and if he was moving her things, to his pack, and that is likely what was happening, he was already intending on claiming the boy. It wasn't enough that she had to suffer his new mate. He was likely going to use that Wolfen Council and the Wolfen laws to force her and Brandon to live inside the pack, and she was certain he could. Because she was unaffiliated and held no rank or status of any kind. Her human world would not be taken into account. Perhaps Alpha Timothy was her best option right this minute. Stood up as she realized it was not going to be just Edward coming, it was going to be Bradley himself and the rest of his Alpha unit, coming for her son. He obviously knew who she was, a former pack member. Her real last name, Whitlock. It was the only way he could have found her house. Her passport and credit cards she'd used to come out here were also under Whitlock. He could track her as easily as Eddie had Izzy. Turned her eyes to the clock. They would likely be here in the country already. Not long ago landed. They could very well be here in this hotel, banging on her door any time he liked. Though she doubted he would know what room she was in, and he couldn't just wander the halls and try to scent her. That wouldn't work. But it was entirely possible that Edward could already scent Izzy, or that any one of those men could charm the woman at the front desk to give them her room number. This was not good. She had no idea what to do about it either. They could well have booked right into this hotel themselves, have all the exits covered. That's what she would do. There were 4 of them, and though she was unscentable to them and could likely slip past unnoticed, with Aspen now revealed, it was unlikely that Bradley wouldn't feel drawn to his child, and there was no way that Izzy was getting past Edward. That man would be hunting with all his wolf senses, hearing, sight, and smell. She could use Izzy as a distraction to get away, but that wasn't fair to the woman. Throwing her to the wolves, she snorted in amusement at her own thought. Literally at the wolves. Then she sighed no, she couldn't do that, was going to just have to wait and see. Chapter 29. Bradley POV. Bradley was about to crash out and sleep in his hotel bed. He'd not slept a single wink on the plane out here, hadn't even tried, had been awake now for almost 30 hours now and was exhausted, needed to sleep so that he could have a clear head in the morning when they made plans to go and get Piper, Brandon, and Izzy. Did not want to be a grumpy, surly S.0.B. That would yell and rant and rave. That would not help his cause at all. Nope, he had to be rested and calm. Piper was unlikely to want anything to do with him, and he was going to have to make her. Though he did want to do that gently. Cooper was right. He needed tact where she was concerned. His phone was ringing, and to be honest, he just wanted to leave his face buried in the soft pillow and ignore it, heard its incessant ringing tone and snarled at it as he blindly reached for it with his hand. Knew it was on the bedside table on charge right this minute, somewhere over there. Probably have better luck reaching for it if he actually opened his eyes and looked at what he was doing. But was too damn tired. Put it to his ear after hitting the green glowing answer circle on the screen. What? He snarled annoyingly with his face still half buried in the pillow. Alpha, it's Luke. Heard of your removalist team. We've hit a snag on moving that she-wolf's belongings. What's the snag? He groaned. Of course there was a problem. Nothing about Piper was ever easy. He pushed himself up and rolled over, hit the speaker button and dropped the phone onto the bed. Closed his eyes and wondered if he could catch a break just once, where she was concerned. The neighbor across the road called the police and reported us as thieves. Bradley frowned and shook his head. How would she know? I don't know. The police want the paperwork for the move. So give it to them. I sorted that out. Put my signature on it. But her signature is not on that paperwork. Fucking humans, he muttered. In his world it was not required. He was the alpha and his word was law. He scrubbed a hand over his face, so damn tired. He didn't have the energy to deal with this. Sat himself up completely and leaned on the headboard. One of them police officers nearby. I can talk to. Sure though. Though, he asked tiredly. We're all getting arrested, I believe. Bradley shook his head. Put one of them on the phone. Find the one in charge, Luke. It took less than a minute for a voice to come down the line. Senior Constable Grayson, who am I speaking with? Good morning. It was barely 7 in the morning over there. Senior Constable Grayson. Used the man's full title. He knew they hated when you got it wrong. I'm Bradley Drake of Drake Industries. Those are my movers, and I think this is just a misunderstanding. Is it now? Not from the call that we received. Who may I ask made that call? Was it my lovely Piper herself, which I doubt, or was it one of her busybody neighbors? Kept his voice light and calm and addressed Piper, the owner of the house. They were all standing in front of by name and with familiarity, so that the officer knew. Bradley knew who the owner of the house was. It doesn't matter who made the call, Mr. Drake. Until I see or hear from Miss Whitlock about this matter, it's trespassing at the least. Bradley shook his head. Actually, it is not. Piper Whitlock is moving to Montana and will be working alongside Drake Industries, which is my company. My movers are there packing up her belongings, that is all, helping her to move. I'd like to hear that from Miss Whitlock herself. Is she there with you to confirm this information? The man, it seemed, did know how to do his job. Not at this said moment, no. Off in Australia, I believe, readying to open her new store. Had to keep this man thinking he and Piper were friends, and that him knowing her schedule should help with that. My men do have moving documents. I've seen it. Nothing on that paperwork has Miss Whitlock's signature on it at all. So that is not proof she has agreed to this. Bradley sighed. I assure you, I am not stealing her belongings, just moving them to her new residence in Montana. I'll need her to confirm that. Till then your men are all being arrested and detained. That is not necessary, I assure you. It is. That call from her busybody neighbor stated it was Miss Whitlock herself that told her to call the police, that those men of yours were thieves. So I will arrest them all. Detain them for as long as I can, until Miss Whitlock calls and clears up this matter herself or states to press charges. Have a good day, Mr. Drake, was it? Then the line clicked off. So much for getting any sleep, bloody human neighbors. If that was the actual case, he wondered just how much information Piper now had on his movers. Had her neighbor reported the moving company, or would Piper think it was Timothy? That man had threatened her and had been going to take her to his pack. Put a call into his father and told him what was going on, that the pack movers were going to need lawyers and bail money. His father had huffed at him in annoyance and stated, "Have you got Piper yet?" Informed the man that they had only just landed barely an hour ago and just made it to their hotel, that he knew she had checked into this hotel. Izzy had not used her credit card to check in anywhere, so it was likely both women were together. He did not want to go banging on her hotel door, because it was late at night here. It would wait until morning. Son, that woman is always a step ahead of you, got away from you at the store, stayed hidden from you even when she was there, helped out Hadley and still got away from you. Got away from her own cousin and left the damned country unchecked. Do you think she's so easily catchable? You can't smell her, none of you can. I know that. Bradley snarled right at his father. Maybe if you hadn't screwed this all up when her mother died, when she was just 10 years old, this wouldn't be happening. He turned his tired and angry thoughts on his father, needed to yell at someone, might as well be the man who lost the girl in the first place. Don't you blame me for that, boy. You had your bloody hands on her. How could you not tell she was your mate? He snarled right back. I couldn't fucking smell her, he roared back. Whose bloody fault is that? His bedroom door banged open and Cooper was standing staring at him. Brad, he questioned. Bradley sighed and pointed at his phone on the bed. Sorry, Coop, it's fine. His temper had brought his beta right to him, thinking something was likely wrong. Waved him away back to his room, saw as Cooper glanced at the phone's display, likely read his father's name, then stepped back out of the room and closed the door. Enough, Bradley, we're both likely at fault to some degree, his father muttered. Bradley didn't really think that. His father should have found that little girl when she was 10, and when he had not found her should have confirmed with her mother's pack if she was there or not. Not just presumed she had gone there. Yes, a lot had been going on at the time. They were dealing with a massive rogue attack. Then his new baby had arrived the next day, just hours after the attack ended. Then there was cleanup after the attack, and one little girl got lost in the process, and now she was a rogue, and likely more human than Wolf, from what he could tell. Had abandoned their ways. Deal with the movers, I'll try and talk Piper into calling off the police in the morning. It's late at night here, like I said. And I'm not going banging on her door at this hour. Just deal with it, please. Fine, you just bring that girl and my grandson back here ASAP. The line clicked off. Bradley sighed, glared into the darkness of the room. Might not be so easy. She was well ensconced into the human world. He'd seen no evidence at all that Piper Harper ran in any circles that were not human, and he'd been looking into her a lot, trying to figure out the best way to handle her. From what he had read, she lived as a human, worked as a human, and had no interactions with her own kind at all. Not since she started her company. She lived and worked in Portland mostly, had opened her first store there a year after she left the pack and had remained there. Only one pack close to her, the Pale Moon Pack, but they did not have any connection to her at all that he could find. She lived alone in the city and the Pale Moon Pack. They were out near the Tillamook State Forest. Well away from where she would have been, and Bradley was certain Piper made a point of staying away from wolves. She'd been through enough pain due to him not knowing about their mate bond, so he doubted very much she would be willing to go near wolves again. She had voiced her rejection and would not be looking to find another mate that also could not scent her. In all likelihood, she would be actively avoiding finding one at all cost. She was likely to be more human now than wolf, he thought, saddened him more than a little. But she still had her wolf, Harper. Though how much interaction or shifting she had done was unknown to him. It was nice that when she had changed her name and built her company for herself, she had named it for herself and her wolf. He really did like that, showed him how much she cared about her wolfen counterpart, that perhaps a part of her might still cling to her wolf inside. Put his phone back on charge and lay back down, prayed that tomorrow wouldn't be a nightmare, that between he and Eddie they could talk to her, keep her calm, and get her to be open to the idea of coming back to the pack. At least now he did have some idea about her and her lineage. Not all of it, but maybe enough. He was hoping enough to get her to come back with him, talk to her family, and try to sort this out. Bradley also had to know if their mate bond had actually been severed that day, or if it was still intact. He had no idea. Needed to figure that out first. She should know, would still be able to scent him. If they were still bonded to each other, he was hoping so, might give him a better chance of her listening to him. Then there was the issue of if it was? Would she openly admit it? If not, he'd likely have to touch her, put his actual hands on her. She'd felt so damned hot to him that he'd lost all control of himself. If that feeling was there still, he would be able to tell himself. Wondered how that would go, would he be able to handle it, and he was very curious what Benson was going to do about it. His wolf had been quiet now for days. Was still annoyed because he couldn't sense his own pup. They knew the boy was theirs. Not only did he have Bradley's unique eyes, the timeline fit, his age was right, they also knew she'd never been with another before him. Needed to stop thinking about it, needed to get some solid sleep so he would be calm when he came across her tomorrow. Breakfast and then a plan to be made. Then they were going to find her, knew she was somewhere in this very hotel. Unfortunately, Eddie couldn't send Izzy out either, so that was not helpful to him at all, likely going to have Cooper go and charm one of the female receptionists after breakfast. Eddie wouldn't do it at the moment, not with Izzy's past history. Eddie suspected her ex had cheated on her. Harry wouldn't do it. He had a mate and pups back in the pack. Bradley was not going to do it, had other concerns about that, so it was up to Cooper. The man likely wouldn't mind, as Hadley had stated, take one for the team. Not that Cooper would have to go that far, most humans would find him insanely attractive and answer all his questions. Chapter 30. Izzy POV. Izzy was at the store first thing in the morning, had called Paul and Devin, wanted to look around herself. They both met her at the store at 8 a.m. She was excited to be in the store, her own store, couldn't stop smiling actually. She loved the gold lettering on the front door, thought it was very pretty. All the stores had it, she'd actually chosen the lettering and color. It was her own personal touch on every one of Piper's stores. Smiled as she walked about in her own office space. Her desk had arrived, and unlike Piper's very cold and impersonal glass and metal desk, she herself had opted for a modern curved white lacquered executive desk which had 2 movable white file storage set of drawers. Her chair was there too, a Napoli high-backed office chair also in white. She walked over and sank down at her desk. Loved that this was her office. Her glamorous velvet Chesterfield sofa in dark gray had not yet arrived, but was going to look great and be very comfortable to sit on, and not just for herself, but for the clients. There would also be a nice whitewood coffee table coming as well, and a dark gray rug to go over the polished floorboards. Checked out the whole store, stood and talked to Devin. His office furniture was not in yet, due next week. He just seemed happy with the way things were progressing, ran through the inventory list of due arrivals, and let her know what was coming and when, emailed her a copy of it so she could be in store to help if she so chose to. Then he assured her he had it all under control. And it did seem that way. Then she headed off, and was about to get in her taxi back to the hotel when she heard her name called out. Looked up and across the street. Izzy. It was Edward. Mr. Yummy was here in person. Don't you get in that taxi. He called out to her, Izzy's heart was suddenly pounding inside her chest as she stared at him. He had actually come all the way here, turned up like he said he would. He was wearing black jeans and a blue short-sleeved button-up shirt. It fitted him very well, showed off all those muscles she knew were under that shirt. Her eyes met his and she could see the smile in them. He knew she'd looked him over, checked him out. "Izzy," he called out as she started to get in the taxi. She had to get away from him. Even from across the street she was attracted to the man. Goddess only knew what would happen if he got his hands on her. "Go," she told the driver quickly. There was a stream of traffic currently on the road. It was peak hour, and it was the only thing stopping him from crossing the street and putting his hands on her. Something inside of her told her if he did she was going to be in even deeper trouble. Her taxi pulled out and she turned in her seat to see him watching her as the taxi drove away. His eyes never left her, bit her lip and faced forward, got the feeling she was in real trouble. He was frowning at her, didn't seem to be mad, but was watching her intently. Went directly to the hotel. He'd not followed, as far as she knew, stepped into the elevator and turned around to hit the 6th floor button, only to find Mr. Yummy coming through the front doors to the hotel. He was looking right at her. She hit the closed door button repeatedly, trying to make it hurry up and close as he walked over towards her. "Izzy," he stated calmly, "just come here to me." She shook her head no at him. Why was it the man seemed to be able to render her speechless, watched the doors close and sagged against the wall and sighed with relief, then realized he'd only have to wait and see what floor it stopped on to know where she was. Pressed all the buttons from the 4th floor to the top, and then stood wondering where to get off, on her floor or before or after, and make her way via the stairs to try and avoid him, was chewing on her lip worriedly. Didn't want to lead that man to Piper. Not with Brandon in the room. Got out on the 4th floor and headed for the end of the corridor where the sign stated exit, and was just pushing the door open to the stairwell when she heard a rather large growl coming from behind her. Turned around expecting to see someone with a dog and found Mr. Yummy at the other end of the corridor watching her. "Don't run, Izzy," he stated loudly, kind of sounded a bit like a warning to her. She stepped into the stairwell as she watched him take a step towards her, then just banged the door shut and bolted up the stairs as fast as she could, nearly screamed in fright at the sound of the door banging open and closed behind her, like all of 10 seconds later. What the hell? He moved so damned fast. Izzy was barely on the landing above him, locked eyes with him, and saw his mouth form into a smile. "Oh, Izzy." He grinned right up at her. She could swear his eyes were more green than she remembered, and then he was coming up the stairs after her slow, deliberate steps. A soft growl issued from him, and her heart rate shot through the roof. Didn't actually know if it was fear or excitement, just turned and bolted up the next set of stairs away from him. What the hell was going on? She could hear him coming after her, though deliberate steps. It sounded kind of like he was stalking her on purpose. She was not the super fit, "I gotta run every day" like Piper. Izzy didn't even go to the gym. She was never going to be able to outrun him. Managed to get 2 floors before she was huffing a little. She turned and looked back at him. He'd kept pace with her but not caught up, and she knew he would be able to. He was very fit and likely worked out hours each day. Izzy was holding on to the handrail staring at him. He was staring right back at her, still smiling. "Stop it." She gasped at him. "Never," he told her, and then moved so damned fast it was like a blur. He was on her, pushing her up against the wall. His mouth was on hers, hungry and demanding. His hands were already tugging at the blouse she was wearing, pulling it open. Gasped as she was suddenly and roughly turned around, his hands on her as she was pressed by his body against the wall. A deep, soft growl rolled right out of him. "I missed you, baby," he growled right into her ear. Then a hand was sliding down her body, over her belly, as he pulled her close. Goddess, he was already holding her tightly. She let out a soft breath as she felt him draw her nearer. His hand moved down her thigh to the hem of her skirt, slipping beneath it to rest gently against her leg. His fingers traced slowly along the inside of her thigh until they paused, sending a shiver through her. She gasped softly at the unexpected touch, her heart skipping a beat. Then his fingers slipped beneath the edge of her skirt, and she cried out softly as he finally touched her hand. She heard a quiet groan escape him as his other hand brushed gently across her side, drawing another breathless sound from her. Goddess, he was going to charm her right here in the damned stairwell, and she wasn't sure she had the willpower to stop him. His mouth was on her neck, bit her skin roughly, and then two of his fingers pushed inside of her firmly, and were already moving in and out of her. "Don't you ever run away again, Izzy," he murmured as he kissed her neck and buried them fingers inside of he, finding just the right spot to make her gasp with pleasure, and then she was moving with his hand. She could feel herself felt his hand move faster and harder, like he just knew what she needed till her spilled out of her, and a cry of yes came with it. Felt his whole body pressed up against hers. His fingers slipped from her body slowly, and she was pulled around to look up at him. She watched as he slid those two fingers he'd used to make her right into his own mouth and sucked on them, tasting her on his own fingers. "You tasted damn good." He was smiling down at her. His eyes were definitely way more brilliant green than normal, and they trailed down her body, to the blouse he'd already undone, reached out a hand to touch her, and she gasped and clutched at her shirt, pulling it closed. Saw him raise an eyebrow at her. "Don't hide your body from me," he demanded of her, and pulled her hands away, then pushed them up over her head and pinned them there, using just one of his large hands to hold them there. "I want to see you," he growled softly, and she felt her legs pressed together as heat burned between them. That growl caused desire to build in her. What the hell was wrong with her? How could this man make her so desperate for his touch? Felt his free hand slide down her face gently, down her neck. "Do you want me, Izzy?" he growled softly. She bit her lips together, couldn't for the love of the goddess take her eyes off of his, such a brilliant green now, was trying desperately not to say yes. Felt his fingers trail down her collarbone, and then move her blouse aside. Just the tips of his fingers trailed down the skin above her bra, to stroke and tease her through the soft lace material of it, gasped as it hardened once more under his touch. "I'll show you, Izzy, what you do to me," he murmured, and then his hips were hard up against hers, grinding against hers. Goddess, he was so hard. He grabbed her with his free hand and pulled her even harder against himself. His mouth found hers for a hot, demanding kissing that devoured hers, made her toes curl as he ground himself harder and faster against her. Found herself spun around to face the wall once more, her hands free as both his hands were pulling her skirt up. "Now, wait," she gasped. "Anyone could come in and see them." "No, I want you," he growled into her ear, his voice low and unwavering. Heat rushed through her as she felt him pull her closer. His mouth brushed her shoulder before he drew her firmly into his embrace. "Mine," he murmured possessively. "Always mine." He held her tightly, refusing to let her go, and she found herself calling his name before she could stop herself. "Edward," she gasped. "No, you must be punished first." His hands left her hips and grabbed at her wrists, pinned them to the wall by her face, and drove himself harder into her, till she was screaming, for him, pleasured by his punishment of her body. Took every aggressive thrust he dealt her, relished in it, completely lost to it. Felt her whole body get shoved hard up against the wall as he growled his satisfaction, himself, his breathing as ragged as hers was now. His mouth was on her ear. "Never again, Izzy, will you leave me," he told her gruffly. "I will come out and punish you if you do." Izzy bit down on her bottom lip and turned her eyes to him. Part of her was terrified by that statement, but another part of her was so very excited by it at the same time. If this was the punishment, she would run away again, she thought. His mouth found her soft and gentle as he slipped from her body, found his hand in her hair, and he tugged her head back slightly. Found those brilliant green eyes right on hers. "Say it, Izzy." He growled deeply at her. She even knew what he wanted to hear. He'd asked her before, and she'd told him them, stared right up into those brilliant green eyes that seemed to be glowing with desire for her, and whispered, "I'm yours." "Yes, you are." He growled again, and she could feel more heat pooling between her thighs. Goddess, she wanted to have him again and knew it. His mouth was on hers as he pulled her around to face him once more. Izzy wound her arms around his neck and kissed him back, moaned as she felt him pick her up. Edward. She gasped, knowing he was going to have her again. Call me Timber, he growled. Timber, she moaned as she leaned into him. She no longer cared where they were or what anyone might think. She felt a brief tug at her hips and a moment later realized one of the last barriers between them was gone. Do you want Timber? His voice was so deep, full of gravel and desire. Yes, she said, and she did want him. Found herself slammed back against the wall, his mouth on hers, so hungry, so demanding. His hands gripped firmly at her hips as he held her close with fierce determination, refusing to let her go. The intensity of the moment stole her breath away, and instead of fear, all she could feel was the overwhelming rush of emotion between them. She cried out, wanting more, actually begging him not to let go. She could hear the low growls and rough breaths escaping him as he held her tightly, and somehow it only made her heart race faster. Her fingers clutched at his arms, then his back, then his shoulders, anywhere she could hold on to him. She couldn't control herself or the powerful pull she felt toward him. It was desperate. She was desperate for all of this man. Screamed Timber as he'd requested her call him as she climaxed finally, her body pressed up against that wall, his hips hard up against hers as she heard him growl her name. His voice, all deep and gravely still, dropped her head onto his shoulder, exhausted. Had no idea how she could have asterisk like that with him, and it not hurt at all. It should have. There had not been one gentle movement at all. Izzy felt his arms slide around her as he stepped back, and heard him sigh softly, sorry about that. He murmured, slipping from her body. Think you can stand up for a second? Maybe. Izzy answered honestly, didn't actually know if she could, felt her feet touch the ground, damn near slid down the wall, grabbed onto him, heard him chuckle softly, heard him zip his pants up, and then he picked her up bridal style. Come on, let's get you into bed. I can't possibly, she murmured as she rested her head on his chest. There was no way she had the energy to do that again. You need sleep, heard the smile in his voice. Izzy knew he was right, was utterly exhausted by this man, had no idea where he was taking her, just closed her eyes and allowed herself to settle into his arms, heard another voice state so much for staying in control. Seems I can't help myself. It was Edward's voice, opened her eyes and found not just one person looking at her, but three. Bradley Drake himself was staring right at her, a deep frown on his face. She bit her lip. He wanted to know where Piper was, and he was here in the same hotel she was betting. Eddie, you're in serious trouble, she heard Bradley say as she was carried off away from them, placed down in a bed. She looked up at him worriedly. Sleep, baby, you're perfectly safe in my bed. Edward leaned down and kissed her softly on the mouth before leaving the room. She yawned. I'm definitely in trouble, she muttered to herself and rolled over to curl herself around the pillow on the bed, allowing sleep to claim her.